Within the realm of true crime, there's a murky domain where the darkness of human nature reveals itself and cautionary tales emerge, reminding us of the lurking shadows contained within our own lives. And today we're sharing a chilling tale that unravels an intricate web of obsession, jealousy, and misplaced trust. It serves as a jarring reminder to remain vigilant, particularly in matters of the heart. This case exposes the grim reality of falling prey to the lure of the wrong people and unmasking the harrowing consequences that can unfold. Darklivity is all about the dark downward slope into the depravity of the human mind and the consequences that such darkness brings to light. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the very first episode of the Darklivity podcast. I'm Kimberleah, and this is my boyfriend, John.
Hi.
You're just going to say hi?
I can't ask them how they're doing. I can't respond.
If you just found me, it's nice to finally meet you. But if you've been watching my main true crime channel, this podcast will be like you're a fly on the wall while I'm doing what I always do, which is sharing these stories with John first. So every time I research a new case, he always asks me, tell me everything. So we sit down, he grabs a snack or a drink, and I tell all. And I always used to say, I should be recording this because we have such great conversations every time. And now we are recording it. So let's get into it.
I'm excited.
Yeah, you can.
I don't know if I'm allowed to talk or not.
As avid consumers of true crime, most of us are acutely aware that monsters can walk around with smiles on their friendly faces, they can speak kind words, and deceive with promises of eternal devotion. Yet we never imagine that it can happen to us. We think, okay, we'd see the signs, we'd know better, we're not going to be fooled, right? It just freaks me out. Like, these women are sleeping with the enemy, like, for real.
Like, you have to tell some sort of red flag at some point, you know?
That's what I think. But then there's a lot of people who don't.
I wonder
Or they
why.
say they're not.
Do you think they're like deeply in love and that's why they just overlook it?
Well, that's going to be a question that I think a lot will be asking going forward. Today's story revolves around Kay Elizabeth Empey, and she was born on April 29th, 1979 in Lansing, Michigan, to mother Mignon and father David Empey. Kay was the youngest of two older sisters, 7-year-old Carrie and 4-year-old Paula, and eventually Kay's mother and father got a divorce, and then they both remarried. So Kay and her sisters were raised by their father David and their stepmother Christine in Bath, Michigan, which is right outside of Lansing. Kay grew up deeply loving and appreciating the state of Michigan and its culture. Despite being the youngest, Kay made her presence known in her family. Her friend Bonnie remembers the very first time she met Kay. Bonnie came over to visit Kay's sister Carrie, and when Kay introduced herself, she literally just blindsided Bonnie by pegging her right in the head with a football. Kay was 8 and Bonnie was 15. That was her way. She would barge in and dominate the room with her zest for life. When she was little, she always played mother to her dolls, and as she got older, she babysat practically every weekend. She just loved kids. She knew that one day she wanted to be a mom and have kids of her own. Kay had a vibrant personality and a great sense of humor. She was warm and genuine, but she also had a strong, stubborn streak. Like many of us do, she was fierce and feisty. Kay decided to defer college after high school. Her love for children led her to be working in a daycare center. However, her passion for education drove her to return to school and pursue a degree in elementary education at Central Michigan University. But she showed her Michigan State Spartan spirit watching every one of their games because it was her favorite football team. She cheered for them with unwavering loyalty no matter where she was. Whether celebrating her triumphs or weathering their defeats, Kay's resilience and elation were steadfast. Her loyalty, though, extended far beyond sports. She cherished her friendships and embraced new experiences with an adventurous spirit. Both friends and family admired Kay for her kind and generous nature. She consistently went above and beyond to help those around her, even at her own expense. Her friends said she had a heart like no other. It wasn't uncommon for Kay to give her last dollar to someone in need. She prioritized the well-being of others over herself. And that is also how you are. It reminded me of you because people like you and her are just built differently.
Well, that's nice of you to say.
And those little sacrifices really mean a lot to those around you. So Kay's hard work and dedication in college paid off when she graduated with honors, and now it was time for her to land her dream job. Traveling and discovering different places was one of Kay's favorite things to do. And she thought Florida, with its beautiful weather and no snow like the Michigan winters, and more job opportunities, sounded like a place to move to start her new journey into becoming a teacher. And if you are new here, I am a native Floridian and I'm now living in California. So I do cover many Florida cases for that reason. And he...
Definitely native to California.
And definitely not a native of Florida.
No.
Not that it's a bad thing.
No, but I've been to Florida so many times, especially with you. It's
Yes,
fun. I love it
and
there.
we're going to be going back very soon for CrimeCon.
Very soon.
Kay relocated from Michigan to Tampa, Florida around 2007, and she created a fulfilling life for herself. Not only did she find work as a third grade math and science teacher at Cypress Creek Elementary School, but she found love. She met a man named Kevin Baker, and ultimately they got married on January 27th, 2013. Soon after, they welcomed their son Mason into the world that same year, and by 2015, their second son Nicholas was born, completing their family. But unfortunately, just 2 years later, Kay and Kevin decided that they were better at co-parenting than being a married couple, and they got a divorce. However, they were both very dedicated to Mason and Nicholas, so despite the situation, they maintained a friendship, and they became an effective co-parenting team for their boys. Carrie admired her sister's strength for turning the divorce into something positive for her family. Through all the challenges, Kay prioritized the well-being of her children above all else. And through Kay and Kevin's efforts, the boys benefited from having two households to call home. And one reason that Kay was able to overcome hardships was because of her strong support group that she built over the years in Florida. Even though her friends called her the backbone of their friend group, Kay had many ladies to lean on, and they would drop anything to be there for one another. The four best friends called themselves the Golden Girls, and they bonded over their love for that 1980s sitcom of the same name and enjoying a nice cold frosé and singing karaoke. I tried a frosé after this. After I read this case, I had never had a frosé.
Oh, what flavor was it?
We went to Rock and Brews.
That's right.
That was the frosé.
It was delicious.
It was really good.
I like to stick to the Mai Tai.
And well, frosé all the way. I don't do karaoke, so that we wouldn't have in common.
I love karaoke.
And the Golden Girls, that's a really good show. The jokes used to go over my head until I was older, and those women were so hilarious.
I've always heard that. I've never watched it.
It's so good. It's like very, it's like very sexual related. You know,
like
it's
older
like, yeah,
women.
and very
Much
feisty.
older women.
Much older women, but they were like dating, and the oldest woman, she was the feistiest.
Blanche?
I think it was. So you do know.
I know Blanche.
Oh, and it was also Betty White.
Betty Snow. Snow White.
It was also Betty White. Poor Betty.
Oh, yeah.
Do you even know who that is?
R.I.P.
Well, Kay and her friends had aspirations of one day pooling their resources together and purchasing a mansion where they could all live and grow old as this tight-knit group of friends. The woman even joked that they were going to outlive their husbands and their boyfriends and to spend the rest of their life with one another. But Kay's favorite part of her life was raising her sons, Mason and Nicholas. She enjoyed watching them grow and learn, and she loved her boys more than anything. She cherished every moment spent with them. It didn't matter whether it was a family vacation or a simple day out, Kay always ensured her sons were first. Mason and Nicholas were the center of her universe. She was a soccer mom. She was the boys' number one fan, out on the field, cheering them on. And when she wasn't teaching or spending time with her boys, she loved to party with friends, as many of us do. Whether it was just a laid-back wine night with her bestie, a night out watching her beloved Spartans at a sports bar, going to Canada and to Lake City with her friends, or a weekend trip back home to Michigan, Kay definitely knew how to have a good time. Whenever she was around, there was bound to be a lot of fun, a lot of laughs. She was very witty. Sounds like a really good time.
Sounds like us.
Sounds like us. It does. Sounds like a lot of us. She and her boys lived at 6207 Kite Ridge Drive in Lithia, Florida, on a quiet cul-de-sac in the Fish Hawk Ranch community. It's a quaint little neighborhood. The homes are very close together. Hers was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, single-family home with a big backyard for the boys and a really great community pool. Kay would take the boys to hang out with other neighbors' kids. It's a really, really nice community. Look at this gigantic pool. Has a lot of amenities. And she became close friends with her neighbor on the right at 6205, which is on the left if you're looking right at her house right here. And his name is Nicholas Calacucci. His son would play with Kay's boys all the time. They would do pool parties, barbecues, play dates, playing in the front yard and the backyard. But one thing was missing in Kay's life. She was eager to meet her Prince Charming to share her life with. She was excited when a former boyfriend that she dated back in high school and again in her 20s reconnected with her over social media. It was around sometime in 2017 when Matthew Perry reappeared in Kay's life. She always had a place in her heart for Matt. She wasn't necessarily a hopeless romantic, but she always thought that they would somehow end up back together. And now 20 years had passed. They had both gotten married and divorced. They both had kids of their own. And here they were exchanging emails, texts, calls. And Kay was swept up in this whirlwind, making plans for the future that included Matt, who, like Kay, had recently gotten out of a relationship with his ex-wife a few years earlier. Matt and Kay kept in touch over the next couple of years, long distance. And finally, Matt came to Florida at the beginning of 2022 and spent time with Kay and her boys. Finally, the decision was made. Matt relocated from Michigan and moved in with Kay, Mason, and Nicholas in their home in Lithia, Florida. Kay Baker was now 43, and she believed she had finally found her promise of forever with Matthew Robinson Terry. It was meant to be. It was a second chance at love that she wholeheartedly embraced. And I want to know, what do you think about second chances? I'm not a fan. It's like been there, done that. It's in my past. It's kind of like that saying, taking your ex back is trying to put poop back in your butt.
I have never heard that, and I wish I never had.
Put it back in there.
Let's put it back in there. Second chance. I mean, it depends, right? It's all like subjective. What did the person do? How much do you feel is necessarily to stand to your boundaries?
And also how much time has gone by,
How
because
much
20
time,
years is a long
right?
time.
There could be a lot of change or little change. It's all about, I guess, like who the person is, who you are. I don't know. I say for each their own, but if it were me, probably not.
And that's what I was saying too, like to each their own. Kay was excited. She was finally able to introduce Matt to all of her friends after telling them so much about him. And Matt became a regular part of Kay's hangout with other couples that she was friends with. Her very best friend of 14 years was Kelly Andrews, and Kelly's husband, Sean, welcomed Matt with open arms. Kelly had heard a lot about him, and soon the two couples were hanging out on a regular basis. One of the places the group went all the time was called the Landing Bar and Grill. Kay's neighbor that I told you about, Nick Calacucci, he actually worked as a cook, and it was convenient because it was close to the Fish Hawk Ranch community, only about 8 minutes away. That's where a group of them decided to go for dinner and drinks on Friday, May 27th, 2022. That wasn't that long ago that this case happened. And I'm surprised not a lot of people talk about this case because it's pretty crazy. Sometimes I like to ask the audience, all of you, what you were doing in this month of May 2022. Just think back, leave it in the comments. That was right after you and I started dating in March. And it was right before my 40th birthday. And I know that we had a lot of fun. So just think back to that time frame and then imagine what you're about to hear. Kay and her coworkers and friends were looking forward to summer break as the school year came to an end. After the school day ended, Kay and another teacher made their way over to a place called Roadhouse for a work-related party. They hung out there for a couple hours, they had some drinks, and Kay invited Tara to meet up with her and her friends at the landing later. So they left the Roadhouse around 5:30. Tara left to go get her husband and her son, and Kay left to meet up with Matt. And then they headed out to the landing to eat, have a few drinks, celebrate new and old friends coming together, and having a good time. It was an ordinary night. No one expected that one of them would be dead by the morning. And think about that. Every time we do a case, I think about that time right before something goes wrong.
It's pretty wild to think that at any moment, just going out doing our usual things, let's say it's going to Starbucks or going out to dinner, suddenly you take a wrong turn and you're dead.
Yeah, you bump into someone, you somehow cross paths with a monster.
It could happen at any moment.
Everything would just appear to be completely normal. And I think about what it's like looking back on the moments for everyone that has to go through this and looking back and saying like, oh my gosh, that was the last time we blank, like the way we talked or did this or that. I think most of us have experienced someone dying or something dying, even like a pet. And maybe we just keep replaying that part in our heads before we knew that anything was going to happen. Hours after Kay Baker left to head to the landing, a man named Jonathan Figgins, who lived on Kay Baker Street, just a couple doors down from her at 6211 Kite Ridge Drive, heard a loud thud outside of his house.
It was just after midnight on early Saturday morning when Jonathan, who had fallen asleep on the living room couch, was awoken by a loud, heavy thump and a cry like a girl was in pain. He immediately thought it was his daughter, so he jumped up and ran upstairs to the bedroom. He thought maybe she had fallen out of bed, but she was still sleeping in her bed. Everything was fine. Still concerned, Jonathan was determined to find out where the noise had come from, so he went to investigate. He made his way out the front door and looked to the right of his porch where the noise seemed to have come from. There he saw a figure lying on the grass between his house and the neighbor's home at 6209. The person's feet were closer to his house, with their head toward the neighbor's or face down on their stomach. At first glance, Jonathan thought it was a drunk teenager that had passed out in his lawn. He could also hear what sounded like they were gasping for breath. He had also heard rustling sounds in his neighbor's backyard, where there was a brush line in front of a road called Lithia Pinecrest. But he was more concerned with the person lying on his lawn, so he turned his attention on them. As he got closer in the dim moonlight, he could make out that the person was lying in a pool of blood around their head and neck. He saw that they had a gaping wound on the throat. With her hand clutching her neck, her fingers coated in blood. This became a totally different situation. Jonathan ran back into his house, screaming for his wife, Ruth, to call 911. They needed police. They needed an ambulance. She was still inside, and he immediately placed that call about 15 seconds after Jonathan went outside to check the yard. Ruth rushed outside to see what was going on. That's when she too saw somebody lying on the ground outside. No one knew who this person was. We have an audio of that 911 call. This is a pretty disturbing call, so please be warned.
911, police, fire, medical.
I need emergency, please.
What?
Ambulance.
Stay on the line.
Yes. There's someone.
Stay on the line, ma'am.
I think it's right in front of the house. My husband just went out there.
County Fire Rescue, what's the address of your emergency?
It's 6211 Kite Ridge Drive. Or next door. I'm trying to get out with my door, but my dog is trying to stop me. Someone is hurt.
Ma'am, I need you to repeat the address for verification.
It's 6211 Kite Ridge Drive.
Okay, perfect. And now I need your telephone number in case we get disconnected.
912-341-3055. We have
What happened?
lacerate cuts.
Okay, who's cut?
Next door, who is this? It's a teenager.
Okay, male or female?
It's a girl or a boy? I think it's a girl. They have a major cut to their neck.
Do you know what happened?
I don't know. My husband heard someone screaming, and then we came outside. They're struck. Get out! Don't come out this door. They're struggling. I'm sorry. My children are trying to get out of the house.
Sheriff, are you on the line?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm listening.
Are you en route?
We are now.
Ma'am, do you know if this person was assaulted?
I don't know. We just came outside. They have a major wound to their neck, and they're struggling to breathe.
Are you with them now?
Yes.
Okay.
We're
How old is she?
a teenager.
Okay. Are they awake?
I don't think they're even responsive at this point.
Is she breathing?
I don't see any breath. Yes, breathing.
Okay. She is breathing, you think?
Yes, but struggling. No. Who do you think it is?
They've been dispatched.
That's not Jocelyn. That's
You okay?
Okay. Look, I need Sophia to come downstairs, and I need you to go sit on this couch.
Ma'am, do you know
Not
this
move,
person?
okay?
Ma'am.
Just sit on that couch. Do not move.
Ma'am.
I don't know what happened. Yes.
Do you know this person?
What?
Do you know who this is?
I don't know who this person is. My daughter thought it was the little girl next door, but it's not.
Ma'am, is the blood spurting or pouring out?
You know, it's all over the ground.
Okay, but is it spurting out or pouring out of the person?
It may have already. I don't think this person has any more blood. It looks like a knife wound.
Okay. Okay, I'm sending the paramedics to help you now. They'll know exactly what to do next.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. You know, please. Is your back door locked? I don't know what happened.
Ma'am,
Yes.
is the assailant still nearby?
We don't see anyone.
Okay.
We back up to Lithia Pinecrest. They could have yards and hopped the fence.
Okay.
Please, is someone hurrying?
Yes. I'm sending the paramedics to help you now. Stay on the line. I'll tell you exactly what to do next. Okay. I'm going to tell you how to stop the bleeding. Listen carefully to make sure you do it right.
I don't have anything. I don't think
Get it
this person is
clean,
with us
right?
anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't see them breathing. I don't think they're with us.
Ma'am,
Yes.
get a dry cloth or towel and tell me when you have it.
Do we have a cloth or anything? They want. Get a towel. Get a towel and make sure the girls are in the living room. Open that window so we can hear.
I'm sending the paramedics to help you now. I'll tell you exactly what to do next.
Okay, my husband's getting a towel.
Okay. Are you right by her now?
I'm like 10 feet away. I don't know if there's someone in the alleyway or behind the house, so I'm afraid.
If you're comfortable, lie her flat on her back and remove anything under her head.
They want us to turn her.
I want you to lie her flat on her back.
I'm afraid. Would you please come out with me? I don't know if someone's in
I
the...
need you to get that clean, dry cloth on her wound. And then we're going to
Turn her over and put a pressure on her wound.
Okay, we're gonna start CPR now. I need you to place the heel of your hand on the breastbone, right between the nipples. Put your other hand on top of that hand. Pump the chest hard and fast, at least twice per second, and 2 inches deep.
She's not breathing.
Ma'am, let's get some compressions going.
They want you to do some compression.
Put your hand in the middle of her chest.
CPR.
Hard and fast, at least twice per second, and 2 inches deep.
They want you to turn her on her back.
Okay, have you started CPR?
No, my husband's trying to turn her.
We need to start CPR. We need to start compressions if we can lay her flat on her back. The sheriff's en route. Ma'am,
Yes.
have we started compressions yet?
Let's start compression.
I need you to pump the chest hard and fast, at least twice per second, and 2 inches deep.
It's 2 per second.
Let the chest.
Okay, the lights on. Bum. My husband's doing it.
Okay. I want you to count out loud for me, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Count out loud with me.
Yes.
1, 2, 3,
4. 1,
2, 3, 4.
Is someone hurrying?
Yes, ma'am, they've been dispatched. They're coming lights and sirens. I need you to continue compressions and if
He's
somebody has...
continuing.
Excellent.
No.
Can you please keep the towel also on the neck?
We are.
Okay, perfect. Are we continuing the
Yes,
compression?
yes, my
Very
husband's
good,
doing it.
very good. I'm just putting some notes in right now for the paramedics.
Okay. How far are they coming from? We don't hear ambulance.
The sheriff is also coming, ma'am. Can we go ahead
No,
and count out loud?
They want you to keep going.
Keep going. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Are we keeping up that same pace?
Yes, my husband's not stopping.
Excellent. Okay, we see this. Paramedics are on Lithia Pinecrest right now.
Okay, what part of Lithia Pinecrest? Because
They're approaching your neighborhood. Let's just keep compressions up. You're doing a good
okay,
job.
tell them to keep coming all the way down to the neighborhood.
They're coming, ma'am.
Just come to the end.
Okay. While he's continuing compressions, is there somebody that can wave them down?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Just
I'm
continue
sorry,
compressions.
we're outside along with our neighbors next door.
Perfect, perfect. Continue compressions. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We still have that
Yes,
lag over the neck.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. And your husband still
Yes.
continuing compression?
And I'm in the middle of the street waiting for someone. There's no one.
Excellent. Excellent. They're turning on your street now. You should be seeing them shortly. You're doing good. Just concussion.
This is scary. We don't know who this person is.
I understand, but you're doing a great job helping. Are you hearing them?
No, I don't hear the fire or rescue. I don't hear anyone.
Okay.
This person, her feet are, she's barefooted and her feet are dirty.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to...
No, you're doing great. You're doing great. We just need to continue those
Discuss the
compressions.
scene, okay? Keep continuing.
Is there a neighborhood gate?
No, there's no gate in our neighborhood. It's just we're, depending on which way you turn onto Falcon Ridge and then a left onto Kite Glen, I don't know, it turned into the Kite Glen neighborhood. I think that part of the street called Kite Glen.
Okay. We're going to relay that
Kite Ridge.
information.
I think that's Kite Ridge, and then you make another left and you come all the way down by the cows.
Okay. Okay. We still have compressions going on?
No, my husband stopped. Oh no, he's going.
Okay. Yeah, we need to continue those compressions.
My husband doesn't feel a pulse.
That's okay. If you keep doing the compressions, that's helping her.
He said if you keep doing it, it's helping because the oxygen's getting to her brain.
Yeah, yeah. Keep doing the compressions. That's helping her.
I don't see anyone coming in the neighborhood yet. Did they go the wrong way?
I don't believe so, ma'am. We just need you to keep up compressions now. They are dispatched. Is he still doing our compressions?
Yes.
Great, great. That's helping. We appreciate it. She's lucky to have you guys. Just keep it up.
Yeah, I hear the sirens now,
Oh, good.
but they're far in the distance.
Okay, just keep it up. Just keep it up. They're coming lights and sirens, so they should be there. She's lucky to have you guys helping. Just keep it up.
This is what kind of neighborhood we are. We will protect our own, but this is scary. We don't recognize her, and
I understand. You're doing a great job, though. You're doing great. Just continue the compression. Hanging in there? Is he still keeping the compression?
he is.
Great, great. Are you hearing anybody?
It's very far into the distance.
Okay.
Where are they coming from? I thought we had a fire department down the street.
They're coming, ma'am. They're coming. They just got off the phone. The sheriff's going to be there any minute.
I hear them now. It sounds like they're closer to the neighborhood.
Good, good. Just keep the compressions up. That's really helping. How's he doing? Is he hanging in there?
He is. My husband works out. This is.
Oh, good, good.
He had to stretch for a minute, but
It's really helping if you could just keep it up.
they stopped. Why did the ambulance stop? Why isn't it making noise?
Is the sheriff there yet?
No one's here yet. I think they're trying to find the neighborhood.
We're pulling in.
If you don't know where it is, it's kind of hidden.
We're on Falcon Ridge, so we're pulling in.
Sounds like the sheriff is very close.
Okay, it's the first left when you pull into Falcon Ridge, and then make another left, and we're all the way down at the end.
So your husband's
We see
doing a great job.
my husband's going. We see the light.
Great, great.
That's the deputy. He's pulling out now.
Oh my God.
Okay, so I can't even begin to imagine what these poor neighbors are going through. You can hear the fear in Ruth's voice. She's panicking. She's yelling at her kids not to come outside. This was a gruesome scene, and no one knew who this person was. And even though Ruth is saying she doesn't see any signs of life, the operator is instructing them to provide medical aid, CPR, with Jonathan doing the chest compressions. And I was getting chills when Ruth was telling the 911 operator that she didn't think this person had any blood left.
I don't think this person has any more blood.
It didn't seem like they were still with them, meaning that she had already passed away. And yet her husband is continuing to do CPR as instructed, even though they know it's pretty much a lifeless body that had just bled out. And I remember the operator saying, "Don't worry, it's helping." But I was thinking, is it though? I mean, it doesn't, I don't know. Like, I understand that they're trying to do whatever they can. And I remember Ruth saying something like, yeah, it's providing oxygen to her brain still. But I hated to listen to the anguish in Ruth's voice when she kept asking, where is the ambulance? It seemed like it was taking forever. She's like, where are they? And that always worries me. That's something that I think about, like, no matter where I live, I'm like, is it easy to navigate so that somebody can get here if something bad were to happen, especially something like this? So police don't usually frequent this area, and it took them over 16 minutes because this was a very safe neighborhood. We hear that a lot. You know, no crime really took place in this particular neighborhood, and it had winding roads, and it was kind of like a newish community. 16 minutes to get there. I know that was the first time you listened to it, just like the audience. So what did you think?
It's midnight. You're woken up to a body, a lifeless body bleeding out or have been bled out on your porch. I can imagine how chaotic that experience is, and then having to report to dispatch to get somebody out here to actually check, and then the dispatch makes you like get bloody and put your mouth to somebody's neck wound.
I don't think they were putting their mouth.
She said CPR, right?
I know, but only chest compressions.
Only chest compressions.
Yeah.
Okay.
But still, I get your point though. It is very
Yeah.
scary. I mean, it would be scary to do CPR on a person who wasn't bleeding because you don't know them. But then,
I mean, you could already look at that body. And you can see its chest rising and falling. If there's nothing coming out and the blood's not pouring out anymore, it's been bled out. It's
I think those are the rules. And that's what I meant. Like, it's
Right.
like knowing that you're doing what you can, but also knowing in that moment that it's probably not going to help.
And I always wonder how long it takes for dispatch to receive the call to go out. Like when you call the 911 operator and you give them your address, do they send somebody out immediately, or do they wait for you to, with your frantic energy, explain what's going on?
No, I
for
think they
that-
send them out
immediately, right? Yeah,
That's
I
why they
hope
want to
so.
ask your address first. They say like 911, what's the address of your emergency?
Right.
Or what's the,
Yeah.
what's going on? But while all this was going on, another neighbor, Douglas Hicks, who lived next to Jonathan and Ruth at 6209 Kite Ridge Drive, was with his wife, Christine, and their two sons, Alden and Walker, and their daughter, Jocelyn. He was playing video games with his son. It was about midnight in their living room. And even over the sound of their video game, he heard something outside that sounded like someone crying. And then he heard some movement. And then like someone was calling out for help. So he also thought it was his daughter. He went upstairs to check on her and her brother who were sleeping. So he looks in, everything's fine. He runs back downstairs and out the front door and to the left of his porch. He noticed someone lying on the ground between his house and Jonathan and Ruth's house. They weren't moving. He didn't know who it was. He also saw Jonathan hovering over and Ruth on the phone with 911. So he was there while the CPR was going on, when they turned her over, and he noticed that she had long hair and there was just lots of blood. He also noticed that she had a gash from her jawline, like across her jawline below her chin. Doug heard her let out one last breath, and he just watched all of this unfolding, waiting for the police and the medical personnel. The first officer on the scene was Deputy Karina Ellis and her superior, Strahan. And when she arrived, her body cam footage shows a man performing CPR with a woman standing next to him on the phone, which we know that's Jonathan and Ruth, and then a woman lying on the ground. She was wearing a pink or purplish shirt. It was a tank top. She was wearing jeans, and she had no shoes on. Her feet were completely covered in mud, like she had been running for an extended period of time. From her head down to her chest area was completely drenched in blood. Her eyes were wide open, and she wasn't breathing or moving. So Deputy Ellis, she immediately takes over chest compressions until EMS arrived. EMS was still not there. Yeah. So then they do arrive and they take over life-saving measures, but unfortunately this person was pronounced dead at the scene. And just for reference of what Ruth and Jonathan were looking at, they could see through her spinal column. Her carotid artery and her jugular vein had been severed and exposed, and her voice box had also been cut, rendering her unable to scream. Those gasps for breath were her last attempts at hanging on and trying to plead for help. So officers get there after 16 minutes and still no medical personnel. And I understand the situation. This victim was most likely already deceased, but I'm just shocked by how long it took them to arrive. And not to mention the officer, Officer Ellis, she had just graduated from the police academy. She was still in field training and she's young. It was like a teenager coming out to help these neighbors.
Oh, wow.
And it's not to be judgmental. It's just to say that she was
Not much experience.
Yeah, she wasn't experienced. And her supervisor, he just stood over her, just overseeing her actions. And I understand, and this is going to sound like I'm trying to be funny, but it's not. I understand she needs hands-on experience.
Right.
But I was a little shocked that this young person who didn't have much of any experience was dealing with something so tragic and severe. The area outside the Figgins family home at 6211 and the Hicks home at 6209 had been deemed a crime scene. After EMS took over, the officers quickly cordoned off the site to prevent any potential contamination of evidence. Deputy Ellis and Strahan began speaking to witnesses to obtain information that could lead to this victim being identified. With time being of the essence, the officers turned to the FDLE Rapid ID system to assist them. FDLE is Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and the Rapid ID system is a cutting-edge tool, and it utilizes fingerprint scanning technology to quickly and accurately identify individuals. I found this to be very interesting. I'd actually not done a case where they ever mentioned this before. But this system has been proven to be very useful in situations where time is of the essence, like a traffic stop or apprehending a suspect. Or a case like this where clearly there's been a victim of violence and you're trying to figure out who it is. However, when the officers tried to use the rapid ID system on this victim, there was way too much blood to obtain an accurate fingerprint. So Deputy Ellis began to do the old-fashioned detective work and walk around to the houses to look for any clues as to where this victim could have come from. And Strahan began looking around as well into the backyard of 6209. That backyard wasn't fenced in like 6211, and the victim was lying in between both homes. So he observed blood on the grass that appeared to be a trail from where the victim came from, leading from the backyard of 6209. So he begins to follow that trail, and he noticed that there is a window screen lying on the ground in the backyard of one of these residences a couple houses down. And that window was open, so he radioed to Ellis to meet him out front of that house. Here's the body cam footage of that right now. The officers are searching with a high-powered flashlight, and they see a trail of blood between the homes. Meanwhile, Deputy Ellis radioed them to let them know that she found something as well. So they're making their way back to the front. So Deputy Ellis was already in the front area, and she noticed that there was a door ajar 2 houses down from where the victim had been found. It was at 6207, and the lights were on. And it looked like, to her anyway, from where she was standing, that someone was inside at the doorway. So at this point, additional officers were on the scene, and she and Strahan gathered in the front of that home with other officers, and they called out their presence, saying Hillsborough Police Department. And when they didn't get a response, they decided to cautiously enter their residence. They cleared each room one by one, and they tried to see if anyone was inside. Now, I do have this body camera footage, so I will be showing it while I'm telling you this, and I'll explain what was observed. Now they get to this door, and it's locked from the inside, and they have no idea if there's another victim in there, if the perpetrator's inside, and they've already cleared all the other areas. So they call out that they're from the sheriff's office, and they still do not get a response. And that's when one of the officers notices that this bathroom door frame next to the locked door has been breached, and it's not breached by them. They did not do this. It had been kicked in, and the frame was broken, as you can see right here. So upon closer inspection, they found the lock that had previously been attached to that door. It was laying on the floor. It was clear that someone had forcefully entered that bathroom, breaking the lock and damaging the door frame. So they decide at this point to kick in that locked bedroom door. You can hear the officers discussing it. They said that the break in the door looks fresh.
They're broken. That's fresh, though. Yeah. The locks are really broken.
That there was a door ajar in the front, a screen knocked out from a window. So they're putting all these clues together, trying to figure out whether they should break into this locked room, and they decide they should. They proceed into the room, and as you can see, it's a child's bedroom. There are stuffed animals, toys, things like that. Now they're going all around clearing the room, making sure that nobody is inside, looking under the bed and in the closet, and even into what looks like a child's tent. And one of the officers notices something. If you look closely, you can see flashing red and blue lights from this open window. That is a window missing a screen. This is the same one that Strahan saw from the backyard. So it stands to reason that the victim most likely came from this locked bedroom and was running from a perpetrator. They want to know whose house this is, who lives here, and where are the children, because they're observing 2 children's bedrooms, including the one with this missing screen.
After ensuring the entire house at 6207 was cleared, the officers cordoned it off and declared it a crime scene. Since they have a suspected homicide, they call in investigators, both CSI and crime scene detective Andrew Van Galler. Van Galler got there around 2 a.m. for instructions and to get a search warrant for 6207. Then, the crime scene investigators arrived around the scene at 3 a.m. Upon arrival, they immediately went around taking exterior and interior photos of the homes involved. Medical examiner Dr. Ashley Perkins was on the scene as well, taking photographs of the decedent and transporting her back to the ME office for an autopsy. Here are some photos of the crime scenes. This is the exterior front of 6209 on the left and 6211 on the right, and in between you can see the covered body of the victim and the proximity she was between the 2 homes.
Now you can understand what Douglas Hicks saw when he was coming out of his house on the left, which is the one with the white railing around it. The victim's head was facing the railing and her feet were toward 6211, where Jonathan Figgins came out of his front door and saw the female lying there in between these two houses. And this is another shot of this area, and you can see how close both homes were to where the victim was found and how easy it was for them to see it with those porch lights on. And I want to ask, can you imagine seeing this? I think we talked about this before, but like walking out of your house and stumbling upon who they think is a teenager, being both parents and everything.
Yeah, I can imagine it. We hear stories about it all the time. It's like it happens almost every day, sadly.
Yeah, like somebody stumbles upon something like this, or just a deceased person. And that's one of my biggest fears is like I'm somewhere and I think it's a rock or something, and I stumble on something and I look down. I don't ever want to see that, but that's like I have nightmares of stumbling upon a dead body.
I always have this weird thought of whenever I'm in my car driving around that somebody's just going to crash and T-bone me at some point or something.
That's so morbid.
I know.
Don't think
Wild.
that. And also the back of 6209 and 6211, where the fence is located, this is where the trail of blood was and where she traveled from Doug's backyard and through the space between his yard and Jonathan Figgins' fence, most likely trying to get help. So here's that screen hanging off the window as well. They also locate this silver Ford Focus parked outside 6207, the house with the missing screen, and it has a Florida license plate with a Marine Corps Eagle emblem on it. Inside the home, located at 6207, investigators also find 2 cell phones. There's one here on the kitchen counter and looks like an iPhone, and then there's one in the main bedroom located on a side table next to the bed, and here's a closer perspective on that. And this one looks like an Android with a black case. Here's what their bedroom looked like. Now moving on, here's a shot of the bedroom looking out toward the hall and now to that broken door frame, and you can see into the bathroom. I'm going to show you some pictures of the damage up close. In this one, you can really see how the lock is just destroyed. Here's the child's bedroom with the missing screen and a picture of that up close as well. Furthermore, investigators found a coat hanger. Okay, it was inside the house and it had been straightened out into a long piece of metal. And during their search, they discovered 3 knives missing from the kitchen knife block. However, upon further inspection, they find 2 steak knives inside the dishwasher, leaving only 1 knife missing. The missing knife was a 3-inch bird's beak paring knife that they believed could be the murder weapon. Now to the outside, remember that trail of blood? Well, they decided to call in a canine to assist, since perhaps there was either more victims or a perpetrator out there. And I hear this in cases all the time. I don't know about you, but like when a knife goes missing, like couldn't it have gotten thrown away?
Sure.
Like, we just have like random knives in our kitchen, but I guess most people don't have empty spots in their knife blocks. I mean, we're not that fancy. We don't have a knife block at all.
I was thinking about that. I feel like there are places where knife blocks are just missing because the blade goes dull. And you're
Right,
like,
like-
oh, I'm not going to buy a whole new knife set. I'm just going to throw that dull one
gonna
away
throw that
instead
away.
of getting like a whetstone to sharpen the knife. I can see blocks of knives going missing, but I don't know. In this situation, I feel like that could be the murder weapon.
Right. And I've heard that in other cases. Like they're like, oh, there was a missing knife. I'm like, how did they know? Because in my kitchen, I don't think we would notice.
No.
If there was a missing knife, we would be gone. We would not notice that. Deputy Brian Polito arrived with his bloodhound named Champ. I love dogs and I like hearing about them. Unlike other police dogs trained for patrol, Champ was different. His primary function was to sniff and track. When he located his target, he doesn't bite them like a patrol dog would. Instead, Champ's unique skills allow him to find the suspect or a missing person with extreme precision without harming them. When his handler, Brian Polito, first acquired Champ, the dog was only 16 months old, and he'd been a rescue dog. And then Polito took it upon himself to train Champ to track specific scents. And 8 months later, after Champ was first acquired, the Jimmy Rice Foundation organized a week-long tracking school for civilian and law enforcement dogs. And that is how he got trained. So according to Officer Polito, when the dog raises its tail high, he's actively tracking a scent. And this behavior shows that the dog is following a trail until it reaches its source. On the other hand, when Champ's tail is lowered and he comes to a stop, it's a sign that he's reached the spot where the scent is coming from. So his handlers have to be prepared to act based on Champ's findings, especially in those crucial moments. So when Officer Polito and Champ arrive, Champ followed a trail of blood to behind the homes where this crime occurred. Then Officer Polito walked Champ over to an area where they found blood on a leaf. I'm always like, how do they locate this in the dark? But he has a very powerful flashlight, and he instructed Champ to sniff and find where that blood trail went. I do have body cam footage, so I wanted to show you Champ in action. So he reacted to the scent. He starts heading towards the road behind the homes on Lithia Pinecrest and east on that road towards a wood line. So the dog had covered about 60 yards when it suddenly cut into the wood line. It's very dark. And like I said, he turns on his flashlight and he notices blood all over the west side of a tree, about 15 feet into the woods. So he immediately called for backup and he secures this area to investigate further. You're going to hear the officer say that the dog has alerted to something and he's talking over his radio and also to the officers nearby, letting them know he's found blood. At this point, he's telling one of the officers that the canine Champ was tracking from the backyards of the residences all the way down Lithia Pinecrest, and now Champ is in this area where they just found blood on the ground. So you can see the blood on the ground in this next clip, and there's a significant amount of it. It's like it was the place where somebody was injured, or perhaps the victim that was found in the front had been in this area earlier and then made their way to where they were ultimately found. The officers suspect that a person came through those backyards, through the fenced area, and came out to Lithia Pinecrest.
On the other side of it, there's just as much blood. That's what I'm thinking. Good job, Champer.
Did you hear how Polito said, "Good job, Champer"?
Good job, Champer.
I thought that was really cute. He was a good boy. He did his job. Our neighbor needs to get her hound working because all he does...
Oh my gosh, she just hounds all day.
He hounds.
Hounds all day.
He howls. Oh, 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 like all...
Can you hear it through the walls?
You can hear it. And yeah, he runs around and the whole thing like shakes. So there was also a helicopter in this area looking for other victims or an assailant. And when the helicopter was directed to that area, they noticed a spot in the middle of some brush where Champ was targeting. And even though the dog was eager to continue, he's not a patrol dog. He was not trained to deal with suspects, and it appeared as though there was a person in those bushes. So Polito did not want to put anyone in danger, Champ or anyone else. So he decided to pull him out of the search. Officers made the decision to bring in another canine officer known as an apprehension dog. And just like the name sounds, the apprehension dog is sent in to subdue an individual until officers can effectuate a safe arrest or rescue.
This apprehension dog was named Curfew, and he was an all-black Belgian Malinois. His handler is Deputy Hall. Before the officers headed into the woods, they utilized geothermal imaging from the helicopter to determine if there were any signs of activity within the area. Yeah, that's great. I love thermal imaging. I use it on drones when I'm inspecting like buildings.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's cool. Like heat mapping and stuff. I think it's really cool technology. That and LiDAR, like thermal and LiDAR mixed is really really
because
cool
they
stuff.
can see, if you look right here, we can show them on the screen that there are the white figures and then there's the dog and the handler and other officers. And the flight crew is moving along this area looking for signs of life. That's exactly what they're doing.
The technicians operating the imaging equipment informed the officers that they had detected a small heat signature within the wood line, approximately 50 feet from their current location.
So you can see that there's this white figure on the ground there. And this might be a dumb question. It's kind of for you and the audience. If it was a dead body, I wonder if it would register because temperature drops every minute after you die.
It would still register until it goes cold,
completely
right?
cold.
Yeah.
Okay.
With this information in hand, the officers proceeded to venture deeper into the woods with the assistance of their patrol dog, Curfew. After traversing around 50 feet into the woods, they were able to confirm the presence of a heat source. A man was lying in the brush, covered in blood. This is the body cam footage of Curfew on a long lead discovering someone in the bushes. and being held back by his handler.
The officer walks curfew along Lithia Pinecrest Road where Champ had alerted, and the officers had found some blood, and now they've got the apprehension dog to try to find out if there's anyone out there, especially after seeing that infrared heat map. So if you listen carefully, you can actually hear the dog growling. He wants to be let off of his leash so that he can run after whatever's out there. And finally, the officers see that there's a person out there in the bushes. Now, Curfew's job is to help them apprehend this person, and the officer even threatens to let Curfew bite the person if they don't comply. You can hear the officer saying, "Show us your hands." And if he doesn't do what they say, he's going to get bitten by the dog. If you look closely, you can see someone's arms coming out of the bushes right here. And an officer's walking up towards the person to assess what's going on and also to make sure they apprehend him and put handcuffs on so that they are not in any danger because they don't know who this person is. There was a white male subject lying prone on the ground covered in blood. They told him to show them his hands, and he raised his two hands up just like he was instructed to do. And when he was instructed to come out of the bushes, though, he was moaning, he was making noises as though he was in incredible pain, and Officer Curtis put him in handcuffs as a precaution. They don't know if this person is a victim or if there's someone dangerous, so they have to protect themselves. Officer Curtis asked the person who they were, like, "What is your name?" The man said his name was Matthew, and they asked him if he could stand up, and he said that he could not, and he said that he was injured on his neck.
What's your name, buddy? I'm gonna get you up in a second. Bear with me. What's your name? Matthew? Hey, we let them know we got a laceration to the neck. Can you stand up? Can you stand up? No? Where else are you injured?
Officer Curtis relayed that he could see 2 wounds to his jugular vein and proceeded to help Matthew stand up so that he could get closer to the road and EMS.
Yeah, we got 2. No, nothing on the chest. We got 2 lacerations to the neck, 1 on each side of the jugular. Can you stand up for me? Listen, we got EMS coming, but we got to get you a little bit closer to the ambulance, all right? You think if I help you, you can make it? You want to give it a shot? Ready? 1, 2, 3. Stand up. There you go. Follow that light. Yep.
He was wearing a black shirt and underwear, and he did not have any pants on or shoes on, and his feet were covered in mud. There were 2 incisions on either side of his jugular veins on both sides of his neck. He kind of collapses on his knees as the officers are examining his injuries. This man is Matthew Terry. He's the owner of the silver Ford Focus in the driveway at 6207 Kite Ridge Drive. And we also know that he is Kay Baker's boyfriend who lives with her at that residence. Although a formal identification was still needed, the detectives felt confident that the female victim that they had found outside of Jonathan Higgins' lawn was Matthew Terry's girlfriend, Kay Baker.
Matthew Terry was rushed to Tampa General Hospital. Upon arrival, the doctors quickly stabilized him and placed him in a private room. The police officers who were investigating the murder were stationed by Matthew's room to ensure his safety and to prevent anyone from interfering with the investigation. Meanwhile, during the chaotic scene on the front lawn, one of Kay's neighbors arrived home, Nick Calacucci. She introduced you to him earlier in the beginning, and they had known each other for at least 4 years. And they had children the same age and would often hang out together. He worked as a cook in the back kitchen of the Landing, the same restaurant Kay Baker, Matthew Terry, and her friends headed to that Friday evening. Nick, of course, wanted to know what was happening outside his home. He spoke to the police officers. They told him someone was found deceased.
He, of course, wanted to know who, and they couldn't provide him with any more information. But they got Nick's information so they could ask him questions as the investigation progressed. And it was progressing. There were a lot of moving parts to this. And at the medical examiner's office, the female victim was confirmed to sadly be 43-year-old Kay Baker. The detectives were assigned the task of reaching out to next of kin. And unfortunately, Kay's only local family was her ex-husband, Kevin Baker, who lived nearby. So the detectives wasted no time contacting Kevin to inform him of the tragic news of Kay's passing. It was heart-wrenching for Kevin. He was devastated by the news. Kevin and Kay, they had a great co-parenting relationship, and her death was a huge loss for him and for his wife, Laura, who also had a great relationship with Kay. It was unbelievable. Laura had just received a text from Kay. It was earlier in the month. Kay sent Laura a text thanking her for the thoughtful gifts that she had given Kay for Mother's Day. The text said, quote, "Thank you so much for the soccer drinks and card. That was really thoughtful and means a lot. The boys love you tons, and they're lucky to have another love them as if they were their own. Thank you." End quote. Laura texted her back and said, quote, "Oh, thank you. You deserve it. You are an amazing mom. Your opinion as their mother means a lot to me. I truly appreciate you." End quote. And this just goes to show Kay's character and personality, that she's thanking her ex-husband's partner and is appreciative that Laura is in her son's lives. Kevin also let the officers know that both of his sons were with him, so they were not harmed in any way. They were thankfully not home when Kay was murdered. The detectives took every measure to preserve the evidence at the crime scene where Kay Baker's body was found. Dr. Perkins went out there. She examined Kay the way she was right after she was found. She did an external exam to document the wounds the way she saw them before moving the body. Kay's hands were also bagged to ensure that trace evidence underneath her fingernails would not be lost. And autopsy technicians processed Kay's body at the coroner's office to collect hair, fingernail clippings, and then those samples were sent to be analyzed for any DNA evidence. The medical examiner then performed a head-to-toe external examination of Kay's body, noting hair length, hair color, eye color, any presence of blood, and any other evidence on the body. And because I wear colored contact lenses, I always wonder, do they like poke at the eyes to make sure the victim isn't wearing them? Because it's not easy to tell.
It's pretty easy to tell.
No, it isn't.
If you can look at someone, you could see the lines in the circles.
And I'm sure a doctor
in the
could.
iris. Yeah, they could see.
So they're just going to touch. They probably have to remove it.
Yeah. I think they probably have like some sort of medical device to.
That's so creepy to me.
Yeah.
So Dr. Perkins measured all of Kay's injuries and documented them thoroughly. In addition, the medical examiner took photographs of everything, even before cleaning the body and after cleaning. And after the cleaning's done, the examination revealed a number of injuries. Many were inflicted both peri and post-mortem, before and after death, which indicated a very prolonged attack. Additionally, several injuries were fatal. And here were the specific findings. First of all, it was determined that shirt that Kay was wearing was actually peach colored, but because of all the blood, it appeared to be purple or pink. It was just so saturated to the point that it had dyed it a dark color. Her jeans had blood on them. You can see it in this picture right here. There were sharp force injuries, cuts, scrapes. Some were very severe and some were not very significant in nature. There were superficial injuries to her face. On the right side, she had 2 to 3 centimeter scrapes just across the right portion of her face. And these look like they may have been suffered while she was in the process of dying. And they can tell that, which is incredible. They can tell by how like pink or pale a wound is to know whether the heart was pumping really hard or whether you were in the process of basically losing your life. She might have scratched herself on like a wall when she was coming towards a neighbor's house. On the left side, she had an injury that was from behind her left ear all the way across to the front side of her neck. And then there was a large stab wound there too. So it was a slice and then a wound that was deep. It went through the muscles on the left side, cutting her internal and external jugular vein, as well as her carotid artery, and it went through her voice box. The doctor had determined she would not have been able to scream. The only thing she could probably do is just air would be coming out of that area, which is so sad. And I know we can't show it, and I wouldn't show it, but imagine someone standing behind her, right? So they're standing behind her with their right hand. They start from here and they slice across and then plunge the knife in. That is just disturbing, and it takes so much force for something like that to happen.
It's disturbing.
And this was carried out while she was alive. There was also an incised wound to the other side of her neck. It was more superficial in depth. However, it was also carried out while she was alive. There was another stab wound that was significant, and it hit the spinal column. That also occurred while her heart was still pumping. Additionally, there was a stab wound to the right side of her neck, just above the collarbone, right below her right ear on her neck, that went through the skin, the muscle, and penetrated into her first rib on the right. She was alive when that wound was inflicted, but it was not fatal. Next was a stab wound that happened while Kay was alive. It went through the skin and the muscles and hit bone in her spine, but it didn't go through to the spinal cord. There was no damage done to Kay's spinal cord as a result of any of these stab wounds, but that injury would have also been fatal. And then there was another wound that had a very odd shape, and it appeared to be inflicted while either Kay was running or the killer was moving, and it was more superficial, but it still pierced through the skin. Now to the back of her neck, there was a wound underneath her hairline on the left. That was more superficial, and it was done when she was dying, when her heart was slowing down. That is the 8th stab wound. So there's I think they counted at least 9 stab wounds. And it was also overkill because the 9th wound was inflicted, and these didn't happen in a particular order. They're just numbered 1 through 9, but that happened while she was in the process of dying. So we've got 9 stab wounds or incised wounds, including the 2 fatal wounds, lacerations, scrapes on various areas of her body, as well as blunt force trauma like a punch or a fall, in addition to injuries on her right hand that appeared to have bruising on it. So as this investigation unfolded, the police were left wondering what the motive could be behind such a brutal murder, because the anger or rage that had to exist for someone to inflict these type of wounds would have to be severe. She was battered and beaten, and it was apparent there was quite a struggle.
Well, by the morning of Saturday, May 28th, detectives began looking for friends of Kay's to interview. They were also downloading the information on both their phones found at the scene. We will definitely get to the phone evidence, but they start with speaking to Nick. He was present from the scene when he got off of work from the landing early Saturday morning. He informed them that Kay and her boyfriend Matthew had been at the landing just a few hours before Kay was found dead. He revealed that he had even spent time with the couple at the landing hanging out, talking and drinking after finishing his shift. To assist with the investigation, Nick provided the officers with a list of names of the people who they were with. One of those individuals was Kay's best friend of 14 years, Kelly Andrews, notifying her that Kay was not only dead, but had been murdered. It was shocking to say the least.
I would be in total disbelief having just seen my best friend that night before. I don't think that I would be able to get one word out. Can you even imagine? Just think about someone that you're close to and how that news would affect you, because I think a lot of times we forget, because we're hearing these stories, that these are real people. They have lives, they have feelings. And I can imagine just hanging out with somebody.
Is it weird to say that I feel lucky that I've never had a call that like a friend of mine has been murdered or anything like that?
Yeah. I haven't had a call that somebody was murdered, but I had a call that someone died in a really bad car accident. And I had just seen them like maybe 3 days before that. They were smiling and happy.
I actually just remembered I had a friend in high school who was murdered by her boyfriend.
Oh yeah, you told me about that.
But I was never called.
Yeah, and you guys weren't like really
We weren't
close.
really good friends, no.
Yeah.
But that's crazy. It's a boyfriend. Like, why do they do that? Why?
I don't know.
Just let him go.
Once Kelly and her husband were able to gain their composure, of course, they wanted to help in any way that they could. Kelly explained that the group of them had met the other night for drinks at the landing. By all accounts, they were having a good time. But by 10 p.m., they had been there for several hours and drinking for several hours. So as the night progressed, Kay and Matt had both become more intoxicated. They both had mixed drinks that night. And the investigators want to know, was there anything that happened, any potential disagreements or conflicts between Kay and her boyfriend, Matthew Terry? So Kelly says there was something that happened around 10 p.m. Kay had walked from their table across the restaurant to the restrooms. Matt was following behind on his way to the men's room. They both enter. Kay comes out of the women's restroom a little bit before Matt exits the men's room. And as Kay is making her way back to the table, Kelly is coming towards the restroom. So Kelly and Kay kind of meet up in the middle of the hallway near the bar. And she explains that they're both excited. They're joking around. They're enjoying their night. And they throw their hands up in the air and they do a little dance. It lasts maybe a couple seconds. The two friends just scooped by one another. They hugged. They're doing a little shimmy. It was a very quick exchange. During this 3 to 5 second interaction, a male patron walks past. He's also heading to the restrooms. And as he's attempting to get past them, he just mirrors their body language. He couldn't help it. He was just having fun. And in the moment, he just threw his hands up in the air, never stopping, just kept on walking to his destination. And the women were just smiling and continued along their way. So at the same time that this was going on, Matt was coming out of the men's room. After Matt saw this interaction, he accused Kay of flirting and dancing with this other man. So according to Kelly, she returned to the table with Matt and Kay, and she could hear them talking about it. She confirms to Matt that Kay was not dancing with that guy. And Kelly attempted to explain that he was just passing by, they don't know him, and they didn't even interact with him. But eventually, things seemed to calm down. It seems like Matt has gotten over the situation. In fact, it appeared that Matt and Kay became more affectionate with each other after this incident. However, for some reason, a little later, Matt gets angry again, and Kelly and Kay attempt to calm him down by ensuring once again that nothing inappropriate had occurred, but he could not let it go. Tara Johnson, Kay's coworker, she was there with her husband and her son, and she didn't know Matt. She was merely trying to help. So she interjected at one point, stating that it was clear that Matt and Kay, they just had very strong feelings for each other, and that was clear from Matt's jealousy. But at the mention of the word jealous, Matt became really angry, and he was saying, "I'm not jealous." And as the night wore on, there was definitely a feeling of tension lurking beneath the surface of all their fun. So eventually around 11:40 p.m., Kay and Matt decide to call it a night. They hug everyone, they say their goodbyes. But Kelly tells the detectives that she and her husband, while they're waiting on their Uber, get a call from Kay. She's in the car. She's pleading with Kelly to once again reassure Matt that she's not dancing with another guy. And according to Kelly, she heard Matt in the background. They were in the car, and once they were alone, apparently he becomes enraged. He's, accusing her of humiliating him, cheating on him with another guy, and even planning this encounter. And something that she was just denying over and over again. Kay thought that his behavior was absurd, that it was immature, and she refused to even entertain his anger. But when Matt refused to calm down, that's when she called Kelly on the phone, placed her on speaker, and Kelly told him, "Stop being stupid and jealous. You need to just drop it." She also just told him for probably like the 10th time that Kay was not talking to anyone, and she certainly did not dance with any guys. So Kay then asked Kelly to tell Matt that neither one of them knew the man. They didn't plan the interaction. It was like she had to go down the list and check off like specifically. She couldn't just say, no. It's like she had to let him know every little detail. Like, no, we didn't know him. No, we didn't dance with him. No, we didn't call him to come here. It was like, it just kept going.
Alcohol.
I know. And I'm thinking, really though, like at this age, age does not mean maturity.
I mean, what was that old saying? Sober man's thoughts are like a drunk person's words. It's like,
no, I've never
it's
heard
like
that.
the alcohol makes you feel or makes you act like what you actually feel inside.
So what is he feeling inside? He's jealous.
He's always been this way.
And it's just coming
now
out.
It's coming out.
So he's not letting up. Kay is still pleading with Matt to please believe her. And Kelly, like many friends, are caught in the middle. She's listening to this interaction between her best friend and this jealous boyfriend. It seemed like Matt had acknowledged that he heard Kelly loud and clear and that he was calming down, and he kind of made it clear like, oh, I'm not mad. I'm fine. He did seem embarrassed that Kay was making a big deal about it and even calling her friend Kelly. But finally, it did seem like, Matt got the picture. Kay wasn't flirting or cheating. But before hanging up, Kay specifically told Matt, quit being stupid. Later on, about 10 minutes later, Kelly gets a text from Kay, and all it says is, LOL, sorry for that, so dumb, all good now. That was the last message that Kelly received from her best friend, because 30 minutes later, that was when Kay's neighbor, Jonathan Higgins, heard that thump and the whimpering sound outside of his residence. After interviewing Kelly Andrews, the detectives took the photographs of her phone and they also request her phone records. Matthew Terry is their number one suspect. Even though this altercation at the bar, it doesn't really seem that significant. But it was right before Kay was found bleeding to death outside. He had the means and the opportunity, but what about the motive? Jealousy? But I mean, there could have been someone waiting inside Kay's home when they arrived, someone that wanted to do harm to both of them. Remember, because both of them were found outside with cuts to their neck. Well, law enforcement officers made an attempt to search the area where Matt was found. They wanted to see if they could find a knife. So they used metal detectors, but they were not able to find anything. And Matt didn't have any weapons on him when he was taken to the hospital. However, they need to either rule him out or prove that he was the one that did this.
Well, back at the hospital, when the attending physician asked Matt how he got the wounds, he declined to answer. When the physician asked him if he inflicted the wounds to himself, he also declined to answer. Now, I think it's important to note that at no time did Matthew voluntarily speak with the police or anyone about the events of that night until many months later. What do you think? Was he in shock?
I don't know. I was thinking that, was there more to the story?
I think he's hiding something.
Well, I mean,
how could you be in shock?
Okay, but we have the right to remain silent.
Of course.
And you know how significant others are usually pegged as the murder.
Mm-hmm.
So I do not blame him or anyone for not wanting to speak, especially without an attorney.
Right. Had they even told
I know
Matt that Kay's dead?
I don't know. That's what I'm thinking. And did someone attack them?
Right.
And he doesn't know what happened to her?
I mean, I guess you could be in so much shock if somebody attacks you, you don't remember it?
Yeah, he certainly never told anyone that he and Kay were attacked and that there was a madman on the loose.
Right.
But that was one of the assumptions based on both he and Kay Baker having been stabbed. So they needed more evidence. So detectives took photographs of Matt's neck wounds, and these pictures were then sent to a doctor who worked at the medical examiner's office. The detectives wanted to know, is it possible that these wounds were self-inflicted?
Right, of course. I mean, there's a different pressure that when you push on this way and then you pull on this way, right? It's got to create a different incision.
No, it's definitely different. And after examining those photos, the doctor couldn't be certain because that's the thing. She said, okay, it's possible that someone else could have hurt Matt, but she couldn't rule out they were self-inflicted because of the location. Anyone has access to their own neck. So that's an easy place to harm yourself. And, but there was something called a hesitation mark. So a hesitation mark or hesitation cut is a tentative or superficial cut, and it refers to when these wounds are self-inflicted. It's when you're going to do it, but it hurts. So obviously you hesitate, or in your mind you're thinking should I do this or not? So these hesitation marks result in visible marks or patterns on the skin. They're often angled or horizontal, and they lack depth. They're different than intentional fatal injuries. There are also usually multiple wounds, parallel lines, kind of where you're starting it and then maybe trying again. And Matt had scratch marks and parallel lines on both sides of his neck. The cuts were also strategically placed away from major vascular areas or his trachea, which were also signs that they were self-inflicted. Clearly, like I had said, cuts hurt. After this finding, Matthew Terry was arrested and placed at the Hillsborough County Jail. A criminal complaint was filed with the court, and probable cause was found to be able to charge him with 1 count of murder in the first degree with the use of a deadly weapon. Now the real investigation begins. The state is trying to prove that Matthew Terry is Kay's killer.
On June 1st, 2022, detectives tried to obtain the CCTV footage from the landing physically. However, the detectives got the footage, something needed to be sorted out. The timestamp on the video did not match the live video feed. It was 12 hours ahead of time, so the footage from Friday, May 27th, 2022 at 10 p.m. would read Saturday, May 28th at 10 a.m.
And that's important because you have to make sure you get it right, or the defense is going to be all over that.
And so once that was sorted out, detectives scoured the video. Here, check this out. They go over the footage with Kelly and are able to confirm her story about Kay's final hours at the landing. Kelly is given the detectives play-by-plays as they go through the video. They watched as that man harmlessly danced behind Kay and Kelly and how Matt Terry sulked and pouted about it for the remainder of the evening.
And as I went through the footage, he's not seen it yet, and neither of you guys, but it looked to be a normal night of friends just drinking and hanging out. You can see them right here. They're sitting here. And if you're not watching and you're just listening today, I am putting the footage on the screen, but I will explain what I'm seeing. So they are sitting here at this table with one another. From left to right, this is Tara's husband in the white hat and the black shirt. This is Kelly in the peach shirt. Matt is in like a dark green shirt, and he's between Kelly and her husband, Sean, who's sitting at the end of the table right here. And this is Kay in the red shirt across the table from Kelly. And to her left is Tara. Now you know who all the players are. It's right before 10 p.m. They're at the high top table on the north patio area. Here's the part when Kay leaves to go to the restroom. She's talking to Tara, Matt and Sean and Kelly are talking together at the other end of the table, and then Kay gets on her way. Now, as she passes table on the left, you got to watch closely, but Kay kind of hits or pats the guy on the knee that's in the black shirt right here. And then she kind of taps him on the chest. This is her neighbor, Nick. And this is all in the eye line of Matt. I'm sure, knowing what you know about his jealousy, he most likely did not like Kay interacting with a guy, even if it was her friend. She also kind of slaps his leg at the end, right before going to the restroom. Now, if Matt were to have seen that unfold before the next interaction that you will see, and he's as jealous as it appears from him possibly becoming enraged enough to kill Kay over this, well then, this could have set the stage right here. After she leaves, you can see Matt looking for her. He kind of like takes a sip of his drink, he gets up, and he follows her. Now, he could have had to go to the bathroom, like, you know, they're all doing it, but there he is opening the door and closing it as he enters the restaurant. Now, just a minute or two later, Kelly gets up, kisses her husband, talks to him for a second, kisses him again. The couple are just being affectionate. And then she leaves to go to the restroom as well. Now we're going to pick up with the camera above the restrooms. They would be on the right over here out of view. If you look to the upper right-hand corner, that's the indoor bar area. And this area right here is the hallway between the tables and the bar. And then the bar and the partition with more tables. This is the path you take to go from the patio to the restrooms. And this right here is Kay Baker wearing the red shirt. She's walking the path now. You see her turning the corner and then disappearing into the woman's restroom. Now there's Matt walking the same path and going into the men's room. Now at 10:01:18, you see Kay emerge on her way back to the table. 2 seconds later, 10:01:20, you see Kelly in the peach shirt coming down the path towards the restrooms. Now you were ready for the cheating because you're about to see what has been caught on camera, so brace yourself. They pass by. They do a little shimmy. There's a guy in a white baseball jersey type shirt a few steps behind Kelly. He's passing them. And as the lady stopped, you can see him throw his hands in the air. We can't hear the music, but there's definitely music playing. And he's just mirroring their actions as he goes to the restroom. That was it.
Done that before.
I know.
Excuse me. Ooh.
It's like,
Totally.
hey, gotta get by.
Yeah.
So let's just watch this again. Notice on the bottom left, Matt emerges from the restroom right as this is happening. You can see him walking towards them. He's passing the guy and then passing Kelly and Kay as they're standing there hugging one another. That was the interaction between Kay and the other man that Matt considers cheating and accused Kay of betraying him by engaging in. I can't even begin to imagine being in a relationship with someone whose perception is that off. But as you said, because it's very illogical to me, I'm watching this, I don't know what you think as a guy, but what does the audience see? Because what I see from watching that video are two friends that obviously know each other, happy to see each other, going to the restroom, and they're like, hey, we're having fun. Like, who knows what song is on? Maybe it's like a 90s song or like, who knows, And then some random guy who has to pass by this very tight space is just being cordial, like just being pleasant and nice. Mm-hmm. And they don't even talk to him. Like, I don't see her even turn, interact with him, look at him.
I will be that guy in that situation, and I see two people blocking my pathway because I have to go pee because I just drank a bunch, and I'm feeling good, so I'm going to match their energy and scoot on by them
Right.
and continue on my path.
But what do you see as like my boyfriend? Like if that was me as a guy, what is your perception of that?
I would see exactly that, but like, oh, I do the same thing.
Right. And we're logical human beings, but we're also not drinking. And that does add an additional element because what do we know about drinking? It throws your perception off.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it could wildly throw my perception off that much.
No, me neither. I feel like if you have a lot of deep-seated, deep-rooted issues and traumas, that I can see how the loss of your inhibitions will release those shackles of those demons and bring them forthright to the front.
Well, after the women talk for a little bit, Kelly tells the detectives that Kay never once made any attempts to talk to the stranger. They didn't know him. Kay didn't interact with him for the rest of the night. The women part ways. Kelly goes to the restroom. Kay goes back to the patio to join Matt and the rest of their group. Before this, Matt had passed them and went back to the table, and you see him right here. Him and Sean, they go to the bar, they're talking, they're waiting on drinks. And then Matt turns his head towards the door to the restaurant and he's looking inside. So he actually goes back to the restaurant door and he's presumably looking for Kay. What does he think is happening right now? Like, that's what I was thinking. Like, this is the downward spiral into the illogical. Like, he's probably thinking that she's with this other guy right now in his twisted mindset. Watch him because he's looking all around as he comes back to the table, like a little lost puppy dog. And I understand being concerned about your partner, but she's with her best friend. They were talking. You're together. It just seems over the top. So he goes back to the table, continues drinking. Kay comes back at 10:03 and 30 seconds. There she is on the top left-hand corner, and she is in Matt's eye line. Now, unbeknownst to her, Matt is agitated. Between the interaction with her neighbor, to the dancing with a stranger, to what she does next. Nick, her neighbor, he sticks out his leg as she passes by. So she stops to talk to him. And I get it, like they're friends. They've known each other for 4 years. There's nothing there. You know, they're just chit-chatting, hanging out. But she stops. She's just a few feet away from Matt. She's leaning on their table. And she's introduced to one of Nick's guy friends. And that's when it looks like Matt picks up his phone and he's texting someone. Could he be texting Kay? This is an assumption. I think he is. I think he's probably like, hey, babe, like, why are you over there? Because if you look at his body language, he is tense. He sets the phone down kind of hard. He crosses his arms as she's like talking to these two men. Now it's 10:05 and Kay's been away talking to her friend Nick and his friend for, a few minutes. Kelly makes her way back to the table at this point, and she told detectives as soon as she sat down, Matt confronted her about the man dancing with Kay. She was like, who is she dancing with? So Kelly's confused. She's like collecting her thoughts for a moment. She's like, are you referring to the guy that was like merely passing by? We threw our hands up. And she explains, we weren't dancing with him. And you'd think this would be the end of it. But we know it's not, because Kay was still texting Kelly over an hour and a half later about this same incident when they were leaving the bar. So after Kelly tells him everything, Matt is still insisting that he knows what he saw. Like, I know what I saw. She was dancing. She's cheating on me. She's, with other men. But here's something she remembers him saying that she found strange. He said something along the lines of, quote, I want to protect my queen and my kingdom, end quote. And Kelly kind of laughed at him. And she's like, no, you're just being jealous. Like, oh, I want to protect my queen. And I was thinking, protect her from what, though? Like, y'all are at a neighborhood bar and grill. That's like, I don't understand what.
I don't know. From the CCTV footage, it didn't seem like she was doing much wrong, right?
But a very jealous person, you're tapping someone's knee, you're touching their shoulder, you're talking to them instead of being with your boyfriend at the table.
I mean, right. We're only seeing what we're showing you on the CCTV footage. There could have been, they were here for hours, right?
Hours.
And we could be missing out on footage that shows her being extremely standoffish to Matt. she could actually not be hanging out with them much at all and only hanging out with everybody else. We don't know what that looks like.
But even if so, like when
You don't kill somebody
when
over
we
it.
think of the circumstances, this is like very extreme.
Yeah.
So this back and forth between Kelly and Matt goes on for a few minutes. And you can see her even putting up her arms, showing what she was doing when the stranger passed by. After Kelly explained this over and over again, what really happened, Matt finally calmed down. He seemed to get over it. He was back on his phone. All the while, Kay has still not returned to the table. She is still talking to Nick and his friend, which probably wasn't making Matt feel very confident because he can't protect his queen. So at 10:09, Matt gets up from the table and he finally joins Kay at Nick's table. He looks like he brings Kay a drink. She hugs him. She puts her arm around him and they proceed to talk to Nick and his friend. So now they're either being introduced to one another, but they're in a conversation. They're all kind of talking and interacting and everything seems fine. And that is what is scary to me. It seems fine. And this goes on for a few more minutes. All the while, Kay is being affectionate. She's patting Matt's back. She's putting her arm around him, rubbing him. But then at 10:11 and 11 seconds, as we pause it right here, you can see Matt. And he's leaning in and whispering in Kay's ear. I don't know if you can tell, but that is what's happening here. Remember Nick? He also spoke to the investigators. Well, he went over this footage with them as well. And he was right there watching all of this unfold. As Matt whispers something to Kay, they get into a conversation of their own, and it's not including Nick and his friend. This is more of a one-on-one between just the two of them. And this goes on for about a minute. And then Matt kind of just like turns around and goes back to the table, and Kay just follows behind him. You can tell from the body language, it's, he like pulls away. Like you can tell this is kind of not good. Kelly tells the detectives that when Kay gets back to the table, she hasn't been back yet. Remember that. She immediately asked Kelly, like, what is Matt talking about? And as he returned, he looks over at Kay and he just goes, just own up to it. Right. And she says, how can I own up to something that didn't happen? Kelly's now realizing that this man is still not letting it go. This maybe 3 to 5 second interaction with a damn stranger. And she once again, I feel like a broken record, but she once again is explaining to him that nothing happened. Leave it in the comments because like we said, it might be not clear enough to us, but could there be any way that Matt could have perceived it differently than what I'm seeing, what you're seeing? I don't know.
Kay kind of throws up her hands like, I've had it. She moves away from that side of the table. And while Kelly is still trying to reason with Matt, Tara's son comes by to say goodbye. That's him tapping Kay as he leaves. And you can still see Kay and Kelly talking to Matt, with again, Kelly doing the fist pumping motion with her arms, explaining it for, the 5th time.
It's like the 15th time.
The 15th time, really. Matt was continuing to be frustrated and insisting that both women are lying and that it did happen. All the while, Sean, Tara, and her husband are just listening to all of this.
Have you ever been, because I know I have you ever, I hate this. I do not like being involved in public disagreements.
It's so annoying. It's so cringy.
It's cringy. I don't like having public disagreements with my partner in person. It's definitely happened before.
You always got to get each other's back in public.
You do, but you can
have
talk
the disagreement in private.
You can talk later when you've cooled down.
Yeah.
But in the moment, it's so hard because you're involving your friends. And I've been that third wheel where a couple's having a fight and I'm just the innocent bystander, and they're both looking to me like, Kimber, what happened? Whose side do you want? And I'm like, but why am I even a part of this?
Both y'all are acting crazy.
Yeah, I just think it's very inappropriate, and it definitely shows maturity, in my opinion, when it comes to relationships and emotional maturity, because it can wait.
So this is where you can see Tara interacting with Matt. She's saying, y'all both care about each other. You're just being jealous. Well, that didn't sit well with Matt. He scoffs. This is going on and involving more of their friends, and it just seems so unnecessary. Kay and Kelly are still discussing it between one another as well, but it finally appears to have been resolved. Things kind of go back to hanging out until about an hour later at 11:30, when only Kelly, Kay, Sean, and Matt are left at the table. Kay says goodbye to Nick and his friend, and then she and Matt leave. So now it's 11:39:17. Kay is hugging Sean goodbye, and they are leaving, and they walk out at 11:39 p.m.
You can see Kay walking out. And now you see right there, these are the headlights and they're on. That's Kay's SUV. This was it being unlocked with the key fob as Kay and Matt walk toward it. So the lights go off once they're inside the car. And finally, the lights go back on and the car backs away at 11:40 and 32 seconds. So remember that Kelly told the detectives she gets a phone call after Kay leaves. That call comes in at 11:48:40. She doesn't answer, but then 2 seconds later, her Apple Watch lights up and she can see that it's Kay calling. You can see Kelly talking on the phone in the CCTV footage. This is when she and Matt are in the car and he is still insisting that Kay cheated on him by dancing with this other man. And if you're getting tired of me saying it, just imagine the people involved in it. These are 40-something-year-olds. Matt's 47, Kay's 43. They're all in their late 40s, mid 40s. The call lasts about a minute. And then, of course, she gets that last text from Kay. It said, like I said, quote, LOL, sorry for that. So dumb. All good now, end quote. That text was sent at 11:56 p.m. on May 27, 2022. And that was the last text Kay would ever send. The time that went by from all of this unfolding to Jonathan Figgins hearing that noise was 30 minutes or so. So it stands to reason Matt hadn't cooled down. Instead, he attacked Kay once they made it inside her home. She ran from him, locking herself in the bathroom, only for Matt, in his extreme rage, to kick down that bathroom door after probably attempting to open it with that wire hanger. He bent it, he tried to insert it into the knob, it didn't work, or it was taking too long, and he just kicked down the door. Kay was able to somehow get away from him, probably not without bruises to her hands, to other parts of her body that we know she sustained. She runs into her son's room, locks the door, opens the window, kicks the screen out, jumps into her backyard thinking that she's safe. But we know the front door was left ajar, and that's because detectives believe Matt knew Kay was going to try to escape. So he grabbed a knife from the kitchen, ran out the front door, into the backyard, catching up with Kay, getting behind her, and attempting to slit her throat as she tried to flee. After she had been stabbed a number of times, he left her for dead. He ran through Doug Hicks' backyard and onto Lithia Pinecrest Road. Who knows where he put the knife, but he didn't get rid of it until after he cut himself on his own neck to make it look like someone attacked them both. Wow. I can't imagine this happening because, here's the other thing. Do you think, that he planned that if it was something that he did on purpose? Or does that happen in the moment that he's smart enough to be like, oh, I'm going to make it look like someone cut me too?
I don't think he went home with the intention to kill her. I think as the combative argument continued, he became more enraged. And as she fled, he got pissed, saw the knife, and then decided to make her pay.
I think if you grab a knife, you know that you're going to cause great bodily injury.
Oh, sure.
Because you can use your fist you shouldn't. Don't get me wrong here. I'm saying, yeah. I think the difference between someone grabbing a deadly weapon or just using their hands, even though those can be a deadly weapon as well, I just think that intention has to be there. It has to be there. And all of this from his perception of her dancing with a stranger.
Right.
This is the darkness we're talking about, the downward spiral into a depraved mind.
That's why going to therapy is important.
It is. Go to therapy. So I'm wondering what's going on in Matt's mind that would cause him, like you said, to be so enraged.
I wish I knew more about his childhood. I mean, that's where everything stems from, right? It's what our parents did to us makes us who we are today, and how we, deal with it.
When we were watching Dirty John last night.
Sure.
We've already seen it, but we watched it again, and it's interesting how parents, bad parenting and teaching your children the wrong way to do things, can really impact their future.
Yeah. So who knows what he went through, but he's got a major issue with, self-confidence and, his jealousy towards his queen.
So 2 days after his arrest, the state filed a notice of intent to seek an enhanced sentencing, which meant that they were seeking the death penalty. They also wanted Matthew to be held without bond. The judge held him on a $1 million bond, which meant he was going to be staying in jail. So on June 21st, he waived his arraignment and pled not guilty. Because this was a death penalty case, a second attorney who was death penalty qualified was added to his defense team. He also refused to waive his right to a speedy trial, meaning he was going to trial in November of 2022. And there are reasons for utilizing this legal strategy. The most important being that it prevents the prosecution from being fully prepared. A speedy trial puts pressure on the prosecution to go to trial before they have a sufficient amount of time to prepare their case. This is what Bryan Kohberger's defense team is using as their strategy right now. This benefits the defense, but this strategy can work both ways. This also means the defense could carry the same risk. It may not allow them to have sufficient time to prepare their case. This is a significant consideration in a death penalty case, which tends to involve a lot of complex and detailed evidence, expert testimonies, and legal procedures, as most of us know. So in some respects, this strategy was wise because it allowed the defense to argue that there was a rush to judgment. Matthew was originally charged before any of the DNA evidence had been fully analyzed and come back from the crime lab, and things were moving quickly. So ready or not, the trial began on November 7th, 2022. It was originally expected to last 2 weeks. However, it only lasted 5 days. And wait until you hear from their star witness, because my jaw dropped. I could not believe the things that were uncovered in this case. So don't leave before you know everything.
It began with the prosecution telling the jury the story about Matthew becoming jealous over a non-interaction between Kay and a stranger. He explained that the man walked past the two women while mirroring and mocking their 3 seconds of dance moves. The jury got to see the video, and Matthew was forced to realize that he was on trial for his life, for an incident he made up in his mind. There was no planned encounter, there was no dance, and Kay and the stranger never even made eye contact as he came up behind her. He walked past both her and Kelly. There were no surprises in the prosecution's opening statements. However, the defense's opening statements were shocking.
Okay, so Matt's defense attorney, Jeffany Spradley, is a really great attorney. I have a lot of respect for her, but of course, I wanted this man locked up forever after what you're about to hear, but she put on a great defense.
She told the jury that there wouldn't be any video or witness testimony that would tell them who caused Kay's death. She told the jury it was a circumstantial case with incomplete puzzle pieces. She asked the jury to pay attention to the evidence and what they see and what evidence was missing. She told the jury that not only was Kay injured, but Matthew was injured too. She reminded the jury that despite having 2 separate canines, including a bloodhound, the murder weapon was never found. That's implying that the real killer took the murder weapon with them. She didn't specifically say there was another attacker that night, but throughout the trial, through cross-examination, the line of questioning implied that someone else came in and attacked both Kay and Matthew.
So my question as a juror would have been why? But of course, the defense doesn't have to prove anything. They just have to insert that reasonable doubt. Emphasis on reasonable though, because is it really reasonable to think that someone else was responsible after seeing and hearing from Kelly about the way that Matt acted? Well, that's truly for a jury to decide.
Well, in this case, there were more than 20 witnesses, but one stood out as particularly significant. That was a woman by the name of Michelle Rogers, and it was one of Matt's ex-girlfriends, and the defense did not want her to testify, and you'll know why.
Michelle and Matthew Terry crossed paths on a dating app in Michigan in 2015. Matthew, a former Marine with an honorable discharge, worked as a software engineer, and he shared custody of his daughter from another relationship. He also dedicated his time to coaching youth hockey and wrestling. Michelle was captivated by his impressive credentials, making him appear as the embodiment of her ideal partner. They quickly entered into an exclusive relationship, and within a year, they decided to live together and have a child of their own. Although Matthew displayed signs of obsession and control, Michelle thought that it was just his insecurities. She believed it was just a manifestation of his deep love for her, and that makes me sad. It really does. That a woman equates obsession and controlling behavior with devotion and love.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that is?
Again, it's probably what she was witnessing with her parents' relationship. Like, this is what mommy and daddy did. So this is probably what I need and what I see.
I think they make you feel like, well, I'm only doing this because I love you. That's why I'm checking your, text messages or whatever it is. I mean, that's like a little less extreme than some of these things. But
Seems like a red flag to me.
Michelle reassured Matt of her affection, highlighting their shared son and her desire to build a life together. On March 17, 2017, with their 10-month-old son in the care of Michelle's mom, they went out to celebrate St. Patrick's Day as a couple. It would turn out to be their last day together. They had plans that day to meet up with some of Matthew's friends and do a bar crawl at several Irish pubs and drinking establishments. The agreement, though, was not to drink too much and not to be out too late. Sounds like us, doesn't it? Like, okay, I'm only going to have one drink. How many of us?
3 drinks.
3 drinks maximum. How many times have all of us said that, right? So they started their day around noon with plans to be home in the early evening, around 6 p.m. So Michelle started inquiring about leaving to go home around that time. Now, I want to point out something that's similar already. In both of these instances, we have drinking, but not just drinking, hours of drinking. In Michelle and Matt's case, 6 hours of drinking already. And in Matt and Kay, they had been there at 5 p.m. And by 10 p.m., that was 5 hours of drinking. That's a while. So when Michelle asked to leave, Matt told her, "I'm not ready yet." Michelle wanted to go pick up their son from her mom's house and put him to bed. They started their day with lunch at the Irish pub where Michelle had a beer with her lunch. And at the next place, she had another beer, but eventually switched to water, knowing she was going to have to drive home. But throughout the day, Matt, he drank heavily. He started with a beer and then he switched to hard liquor. At one point, they were separated and he wasn't even answering his phone. So she eventually found him. He was at an empty bar where he was not even coherent anymore. He could barely speak, but he was still adamant he wasn't ready to leave. Yikes. Okay, so now we're getting an insight into the fact that Matt seems to have a problem when he drinks. It seems like he can't control himself, which, if somebody says, "I'm only going to have a few drinks," I know we joke about it, but most of us can have a few drinks and then we know, okay, it's time to go. She said that he was slurring his words so badly. He couldn't talk. He was talking nonsense. He was stumbling all over the place. So he wasn't willing to leave. He was very uncooperative and Michelle was angry. And so she decided to leave without him. It seems reasonable, but what would you have done? I personally don't think I would leave you or anyone that I came with, but I understand why she left. He's a grown man. He can figure it out himself.
I don't know. If you're incoherent, I would never leave you.
Yeah,
I wouldn't leave anybody
friend.
who's incoherent. And I feel like that's just irresponsible. But,
I know it's hard to get them to leave though.
Right. That's the difficult part. But you went out, but this is the first time she ever found him like this.
We don't know that.
Right. So I don't know if you're used to this. I don't know.
Maybe you need a group of people to help you get them out.
God, sounds fun.
After leaving the bar, Michelle retrieved her son and settled him into bed. Following that, she prepared some sandwiches for their dinner and had just finished eating when Matt finally decided to arrive at home. According to her testimony, she stated that at approximately 9 p.m., she heard a knock on the sliding glass door in the kitchen. She opened it and she found Matt in a highly intoxicated state. He was stumbling and he had signs of distress, frustration, and anger. She was sensing his shift in his demeanor, so she decided to leave him in the kitchen and she took a seat on the couch in their living room. In the space that they had and how it was laid out, it allowed her to see him moving around, trying to navigate the kitchen and make a meal for himself. Due to the subsequent events that you're about to hear, her recollection of these moments became very limited.
I remember sitting on the couch watching TV, and then, the next thing I remember is standing behind the couch, and I'm looking at him in the kitchen, and I remember him coming around the counter and coming at me very quickly and aggressively, to the point where I kind of backed off and braced myself, and I actually verbally said, "What are you doing? Oh my God, what are you doing?"
And when you said the words to him, "What are you doing?" what, if anything, did he do?
He proceeded to knock me into the front door that was behind me, and at that point, then we both fell to the floor.
She recalled being seated on the couch, but her memory abruptly shifted to a moment where she found herself standing behind the couch. It appeared that an argument had ensued, triggered by something that Matt said that prompted her to assume a defensive stance as she was preparing to leave or protect herself. The next fragment of her memory involved Matt swiftly and aggressively advancing towards her. Instinctively, she retreated. She raised her hands in front of her defensively while saying, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" In a forceful manner, he approached her with his fist clenched, causing her to collide with their front door. Subsequently, he forcefully brought her down to the ground, utilizing various wrestling maneuvers, including chokeholds, to overpower this woman. And in a desperate attempt to resist and break free, he struck her whenever he could, while she was trying to protect herself and seek an escape.
He just continues to, for lack of a better phrase, beat the shit out of me. And I keep trying to escape.
In his highly intoxicated state, he was hitting her in the face, in the chest, in the back, any area he could reach. And this sounds like what happened to Kay. All of those bruises that were found all over her body. As Michelle tried to attempt to break free, Matt was still doing wrestling maneuvers to gain dominance and to hinder her resistance. Seeking to establish a connection with him, she begged him to stop. She said, "I love you." She was questioning why he was doing this to her. And in response, he slammed her head into the ground and he uttered, "No, you don't. F you. I'm going to kill you." These words left a mark on Michelle's memory.
When I yelled at him, I said, "I love you. Why are you doing this?" And he said, "No, you don't. F you. I'm going to kill you."
They were intertwined with her profound belief that her life was hanging by a thread. And it's scary because it was. You have to think, this is a man who says that he loves you. Now he's on top of you saying he wants to kill you. It's such a shift in a mindset to know this is a person that I've been with, that I trust, that's supposed to protect me. And I don't even know what I would be thinking because it's so hard to even imagine.
Yeah, what a shift in dynamics. I would definitely leave that situation. But God, all that effort you put into and lies, right? Just to see this come out breaks everything that you once had in the past.
And sometimes this is the first time, like you said, that anybody even knows. Despite the difference in size and their strength and fighting abilities, Matthew remained impaired by alcohol. So for a brief moment, he allowed Michelle to momentarily break free and she stood up. However, almost immediately, he started to strike her in the face, telling her that she deserved to die. And it was relentless. She was on the ground fighting to survive. The living room was carpeted, but the kitchen had tile on it. So her lower body was on the carpeted area while her upper body was on the unforgiving tiles. And amidst the chaos, blood had saturated her surroundings, likely coming from her nose because she was being struck in the face. Matt was repeatedly slamming her face into the tiles, shattering her nose, chipping her teeth, and still applying pressure to her to keep her down. She exerted every ounce of strength to push him away. However, there was so much blood and it made the tile floor just completely slippery, so she could not gain traction or stability enough to escape the attack.
And at that point, there was blood everywhere.
Where is the blood coming from?
I believe my nose. At that time, he had broken my nose.
As thoughts raced through Michelle's mind, her attention turned to her two sons. She had an 8-year-old son from a previous relationship and a 10-month-old baby with Matthew. The realization that her life hung in the balance began to sink in, and concerns about who was going to take care of her sons when she died, that weighed heavily upon her. And I think about that. I'm sure Kay felt the same exact way. And it makes me sad because I think, like, what would my daughter do if I wasn't around? She'd have to live with the fact that she doesn't have a mom anymore, the trauma that would cause and how it would affect her mentally.
Absolutely.
I'm sure that that's what people are thinking in those moments is like, I want to survive for my family. We hear that all the time.
Or like, leave your kid alone with that monster.
I know. These distressing circumstances had an uncanny resemblance to the ones that have just unfolded 5 years later to Kay Baker on May 27th into the early morning hours of May 28th. She also was the mother of 2 boys. Kay, too, found herself entangled in a life or death struggle with Matthew Terry. Tragically, she would not live to share her story with the jury. Instead, it fell upon Michelle, now present at her murder trial, to seek justice for Kay and for the justice that was never done in her case, a pursuit that the Michigan courts had failed to achieve, which we will discuss in a minute. But the gravity of Michelle's words carried immense weight. Her situation mirrored the injuries inflicted upon Kay. drawing unsettling parallels between their experiences. The courtroom was silent. They were completely engrossed because the story wasn't over yet. Michelle fearlessly recounted the chilling details of that night 5 years ago when Matthew Terry attempted to end her life. Somewhere along this tumultuous struggle, she decided to momentarily cease her resistance, hoping that it would grant him a moment of clarity. She vividly recalled lying on her left side, her gaze fixed on the kitchen trash can while he was slamming her head against the floor. With each impact, her vision faded into darkness before momentarily returning. She knew that her consciousness was slipping away at any moment. Convinced that she was rendered helpless, though, Matt left her on the floor and went to the kitchen. During this commotion, Michelle could hear his movements. She could hear him shuffling around. This unexpected pause in the attack gave her an opportunity to flee. She got up, she was dizzy and disoriented, and she naively believed that it was over, that Matt had come to his senses. However, her assumptions could not have been further from the truth. In an instant, he was once again coming after her. He approached her from behind, wrapping his arm around her neck, and he stabbed her in the throat. That is exactly the same thing that happened to Kay. How could he have gotten away with this? Michelle felt the piercing thrust of the knife and the gush of blood going everywhere. And at that moment, her adrenaline kicked in. She knew she had to get out of the house or she was going to die. It's likely that once Matt stabbed her this way, he believed that her injuries were fatal. So he loosened his grip and he looked at her wounds. And with her last bit of strength, full adrenaline, she was able to stand. And once again, it felt like Matt was punching her in the back. But guess what was really going on? He was stabbing her in the shoulder. Kay Baker had also sustained 3 stab wounds to her shoulder and chest area near her clavicle. Now, with Matt following closely behind her, Michelle was able to get to the garage and hit the garage door opener. I have a photo of the wall inside Michelle's house from the scene of this crime, and you can see the blood smears as she struggled to escape. The garage door was opening so slowly, and Matthew was right on her heels trying to prevent her from leaving. At one point, they were both on the ground, but Michelle was able to roll underneath the garage door and down her driveway. I cannot even believe this. It sounds like, it's just insane. And once outside, she began screaming for help. Kay couldn't because of her throat injuries. She ended up once again underneath Matt. He was on top of her, slamming her head into the concrete, trying to kill her, telling her she was going to die. As she was screaming, she realized her neighbors were outside. She could hear them shouting something, but she couldn't make out their words. But she recalled one of them telling Matt to get off of her and that they were calling the police. As he was screaming that he was going to kill her, he pulled back the knife once again, intending to stab her. And I can't even believe this, but she grabbed the blade of this knife with her hand and held onto it. She pulled it towards her chest and away from him. And at one point, they were both holding the knife. And she knew if she let go, she wasn't going to survive. So she continued to pull the knife until it fell on her left side. And she knew if she didn't get control of it, that he was going to get it again. So she rolled over on top of it, keeping it away from him. It didn't stop there, though. He didn't stop. He was continuing to slam her head into the concrete. It's so crazy.
And all this while the neighbor watched.
Right, because they're scared.
Yeah.
Like, people don't want to do anything because they're afraid he's going to turn on them.
I would do something.
And he was twisting his body, biting her on the cheek, trying to get to that knife. And the entire time, she was begging and screaming for help. That's when Michelle began to hear sirens coming towards her. Matt heard them too, which prompted him to get up and finally get off of her. And guess what he did? He ran back into the house. She finally got up and she was still holding the knife because she was worried that he was going to take it from her. She ran toward her neighbors who were on the phone with 911, and she threw the knife so that he wouldn't be able to get it. And then she collapsed in their yard. This sounds so eerily similar to what happened to Kay. She also collapsed in a neighbor's yard. Poor Kay wasn't able to scream. But Michelle, she was begging for someone to go back inside her house and save her baby from Matt. Can you even imagine? Like you said, like her 10-month-old baby is inside that house and that man is now inside that house.
Yep. The next thing Michelle remembered was waking up in the hospital surrounded by her family and her baby. She remained in the ICU for 5 days, and she had been stabbed once in the eyebrow, twice in the throat, and 3 times in her shoulder. She also had bite wounds on her face and arms. Her nose was broken. She lost a back molar. After a probable cause hearing, due to the severity of her injuries, Matthew Terry was charged with attempted murder.
Now, you're not going to believe this next part. I mean, what you have already heard has been shocking enough, but wait, because this is when my jaw dropped. Matt needed support while he was in jail awaiting his trial. He needed someone on his side, someone that knew him. And that someone he picked was Kay Baker. And believe it or not, this is how they reconnected. I kid you not. Kay was living in Florida, and Matt reached out, of course, telling his version of the story, however that went. And Kay, who I told you dated him in high school, then again when they were in their 20s, she couldn't believe the charges against him. She flew to Michigan to support him, and the two rekindled their relationship. She sat behind the defense table during his trial for the crime he committed against Michelle, a woman that was now sitting on the witness stand bravely recounting the night that she almost lost her life. It's unreal. And during Matt's trial, Kay Baker took his side. She testified for him in court, telling the judge, quote, "He's very truthful and I trust him completely," end quote. Eventually, Matt's lawyers were able to get his charges reduced from attempted murder to intent to commit great bodily harm. They argued that he had no intention to kill or harm anyone. They further argued that Matthew had only used his training as an ex-Marine to neutralize a fight. What? During Matt's sentencing hearing, Michelle Rogers read her victim impact statement. However, she had to face glares from his friends and his family, including Kay, who were present in the gallery. Matthew's father, Mark, had told the Tampa Bay Times about this incident, saying, quote, "Had he intended to murder or cause bodily harm, that would have happened," end quote. And that's just gross.
Yeah.
Like, if he would have wanted to kill her,
did it.
he would have done it.
Yeah.
Matt's family supported him and even denied his behavior and his actions. And ultimately, Matt was sentenced.
Wait, I have to go back to that because he's saying cause bodily harm. He would have done it. He stabbed her in the neck. How is that not causing bodily harm? I don't know.
Ultimately, Matt was sentenced to 10 years in prison with the possibility of parole, but after serving 3 years and 2 months at his first parole hearing in 2020, Michelle attended and she begged to not let him out. She believed if he were released, her life and the life of her son would be in danger. The prosecuting attorney also believed that Matthew continued to be an ongoing threat to the public. The prosecutor wrote a letter to this parole board, which stated in part, quote, "Dear Chairperson, I'm writing concerning the pending parole service of inmate Matthew Terry. Matthew Terry is set to be paroled and undergo reentry and parole in September of 2020. It's my belief that this offender and the public would benefit from an enhanced level of supervision relative to what a typical parolee would receive. It's my hope that he will be assigned 2 full years of parole rather than 1. It's standard practice that parolees are provided a list of conditions, as you are aware. In a case like this, that would involve abstaining from drugs, alcohol, no contact with the victim, and no criminal behavior. It's my hope that these conditions can be supervised more closely than your average offender given Mr. Terry's history." She goes on to say, Matthew Terry has had multiple alcohol-related offenses and also numerous assault offenses, the most recent case for which he is now incarcerated. He was intoxicated and repeatedly bludgeoned, stabbed, and punched his girlfriend numerous times. We went to trial on assault with the intent to commit murder, and the jury convicted only for great bodily harm. Nevertheless, I believe it's fair to consider all of the evidence and conduct while he is under supervision. The injuries were found to be potentially life-threatening, and this offender was fortunate to have a resilient victim and a sympathetic jury. A reentry program with adequate supervision will increase the chances that Matthew Terry will not commit another crime. A GPS monitor would hopefully keep him away from a past victim, but wouldn't keep him from new abusive relationships. We see all too often with domestic abusers that they have serial relationship, each abusive. Our hope is that we can break this pattern and that Mr. Terry will join the ranks of those who have successfully completed parole and a re-entry program. That was the end of the letter. And Michelle also addressed the parole board, stating in part, quote, if he gets out, I fear for myself and my family and for his next victim, end quote. Michelle pleaded in a letter to the Michigan Parole Board to keep him behind bars for society would be in danger. But her request was denied, and Matthew was released after 1 year of unsupervised parole on December 29, 2021. Thereafter, he moved to Florida to resume his relationship with Kay Baker and move into her home with their 2 young sons. Once Matt was in the picture, Kay stopped hanging out with her Golden Girls friend group. All of her free time was spent with Matt, and now her friends wondered if that isolation was on purpose and if it was a sign of what was to come, a sign that they had all missed. And remember I said in the beginning that we would all see the signs, but maybe they're not so apparent, especially when we're all busy with our own lives.
Especially if they're telling you, no, this is great. My life is so wonderful.
That's
Just
true.
lying to you, right?
Even Kay's father and stepmother had tried to warn her. They never liked Matt, even back when the couple dated 20 years earlier. Her dad specifically told her, what if he attacks you like he did to Michelle? And she said, quote, listen, Dad, I'm not going to let that happen. This is not going to happen in my house with my sons, end quote. But her father said Kay was very stubborn. He thinks that she was in love with the version of Matt that existed 20 years ago. And Michelle was well aware of Kay's existence, remember? Because Kay was at Michelle's trial. Remember that? However, she didn't know how serious the relationship really was, and she hoped that it would have ended once Matt went to prison, but we know that it didn't. And Kay waited for him to get out so they could resume their relationship. During the trial, Michelle, at great risk to herself, she actually reached out to Kay and she begged her not to let Matthew be a part of her life. She tracked Kay down on Facebook and sent her a photo of her stab wounds on Facebook Messenger with the message, quote, please don't let this be you, end quote. She tried.
Yeah.
She
did.
tried.
God, I wonder what she saw in him like from 20 years ago. It's so weird to think about the minds of these people. Like, and man, I couldn't understand. Like, I wouldn't, if I know that you were abusive and all that, I would see those red flags. I'd be like, no. And then,
But maybe they say things like, we just watched Dirty John. Maybe they say things like, that was a different person.
Right, of course.
They were hard to deal with.
People
you know,
are genuinely,
I love you. I didn't really
yeah.
love her. She was hard to handle. She instigated it. You know how they lie.
Most people are empathetic creatures.
And also no victim blaming. And I don't want to victim blame, and I'm not victim blaming. Just because we have questions doesn't mean that we would ever blame Kay for what this monster did to them, because we know they're conniving. They're good at wearing masks to hide their true self.
Yeah.
And it is hard. Unfortunately, Kay was not receptive to Michelle's pleas to proceed with caution. And 5 years later, Kay Baker would be dead. Kay's friends and family were devastated after hearing what happened to Michelle. Revealing the truth about Michelle, they were in tears. They expressed regretting not believing Michelle from the beginning, and they apologized to her, and they offered support, saying they were so sorry for her pain that she had to experience.
During Matthew's trial, a criminal analyst from the crime lab testified that she was able to obtain a complete DNA profile from Kay Baker's fingernail clippings. She further testified that the DNA found in the clippings matched that of Matthew Terry's DNA. The analyst mentioned that the chances of the DNA belonging to Matthew were 160 quadrillion. It was also revealed that the blood found at the crime scene was a combination of Kay Baker's and Matthew Terry's. The prosecution put forth evidence that showed Matt killed Kay in a jealous rage. Matt explained to the judge that he wanted to testify on his behalf.
Of course he did.
However, on the advice of counsel, he wasn't able to.
I was promised an accurate depiction of the incident that occurred the night my girlfriend, Kay Baker, died, as I had witnessed it. However...
Judge, if I could just caution my client, he can tell you whatever he wants.
But
I just want to caution
it can't be used against him.
Absolutely.
Judge, I would ask that you place him under oath.
His appeal.
All right. He's under oath. I'll remind him.
In the closing arguments, the prosecution pointed out that if things had worked out differently, it would have been Michelle Rogers who lost her life instead of Kay Baker. They told the jury that Matthew Terry was a ticking time bomb who needed little to no provocation to become deadly. They told the jury that Kay was tortured and suffered greatly before her demise. They asked the jury to save someone else from the same fate by finding Matthew guilty of Kay's brutal murder. The defense rested without calling one single witness. They told the jury that they didn't have to put on a defense because the prosecution had failed to make their case. They said after 5 days of testimony that the jury was no closer to knowing the truth of how Kay Baker died or how Matthew obtained the 2 injuries to his neck. However, they told the court a different story. They alleged Matt tried to render first aid to Kay after an unknown assailant attacked Kay.
Yeah, right.
They claimed the same person who killed Kay then stabbed Matthew as he chased the man down through the darkness behind his home on Lithia Pinecrest. It only took the jury a few hours to find Matthew guilty of first-degree premeditated murder of Kay Baker.
Since this was a death penalty trial, it was up to the jury to sit through the penalty phase and come up with a sentence. So during that penalty phase, they learned that Kay loved her children, that her first job was as a daycare worker, that she studied elementary education in college before fulfilling her dream and becoming a school teacher. Kay's close friend Kelly Andrews addressed the court and expressed how deeply Kay cherished her sons. She emphasized that becoming a mother was Kay's lifelong dream, that Mason and Nicholas were the embodiment of that dream, and Kay wholeheartedly embraced parenting and was willing to go to great lengths for the sake of her boys. Kelly went on to explain to the court that the extent of Kay's efforts to maintain a friendship with her ex-husband, Kevin, highlights her commitment to ensuring a positive co-parenting relationship for the well-being of their children. Kay's sister Carrie addressed the court and shared her heartfelt words about the celebration of life that they had for Kay. The event took place in their hometown in Lansing, Michigan, where memories of Kay's life were cherished and celebrated. And during the gathering, they indulged in her favorite foods, and they savored each bite to remember her and the joy that she brought to their lives. But it wasn't just through food that they honored her memory. The room was filled with her favorite music, each song reminding everyone of her vibrant spirit and the way that she lit up a room. Carrie also spoke passionately about the impact that Kay's death had on their lives. Through her words, Carrie conveyed the profound loss that they all felt, but also the gratitude for having Kay in their lives, even for a short while. Then, the defense called Mark Terry, which was Matthew's father, to speak about his son's character and the hardships that he encountered while he was growing up. Mark Terry provided insight into Matthew's personality, describing him as a shy, quiet, and reserved young man. The jury was then shown pictures of him graduating, family photos, pictures of him with his son Lachlan and his daughter Jessica. They also learned about Jessica's struggle with addiction and that she died when she was only 19 from a drug overdose, and how this affected their family and Matt in a negative way. That happened in 2017, which was the same year that Michelle's attack happened. However, it was when he was already in jail. So they really can't use that as an excuse, not that it even would be. But his mother, Kathy, also spoke to the court. And this is what she said. She said, quote, "I can't imagine any mother or any parent wanting their child to die. You just can't stop loving them." She was hysterically crying while she was saying this. However, they asked her, well, can you think about how Kay's family feels? And she said, quote, "Oh, I know. I'm so sorry. I pray for them every day and for their children, their friends and family. I'm just so, so sorry," end quote. I understand, and I have said this to you so many times. I've said even to my friends, you don't stop loving someone right away. It's not like if something happened, love for someone doesn't just immediately vanish.
Right.
It's like the realization, the grieving process, I don't know, like removal of your feelings.
Sure.
But for a parent, I do find that to be very hard.
It's a different kind of love, right?
Matt's aunt described him to the jury as a kind and conscientious person who never displayed a temper. This aimed to create a positive image of him in the court's eyes, but we already know of the severity of Michelle Rogers and Kay Baker's injuries. So to argue that Matt didn't have a temper, it doesn't It doesn't add up.
Interestingly enough, though, because as he was growing up, he wasn't drinking and getting drunk. The only time he showed temper is when he was inebriated.
Well, in these cases that we know of.
Right.
By highlighting the extent of their injuries, the prosecution attempted to undermine the defense's claim that Matthew was gentle and nonviolent. Finally, Kay Baker's stepmom, Christine, and this was really sad, she raised her for 35 years, and she spoke in court to Matt Terry, the man who had killed her daughter. She said, quote, "What words did Kay say that night to justify you killing her? How bad could those words be? Did she say Dad was right? Michelle was right? Was that what got her the death sentence?" It's very unsettling as a parent to fear for your daughter because of the partner they've chosen. I feared for Kay's life. Her dad feared for Kay's life, and I don't understand why she did not. I hope you have fear for your life, end quote. After all the testimonies presented during the sentencing phase, the jury engaged in a 1-hour deliberation before ultimately rejecting the imposition of the death penalty. Consequently, the judge proceeded to sentence Matthew Terry to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole because that was the only option available and remaining. This judge, Christopher Sabella, he told Matthew, quote,
"I don't know what happened in Michigan as far as the trial and the sentence, but based on what I heard, I believe that you should have been in prison in Michigan and that Miss Baker should still be alive. This is Florida. You're going to prison for the rest of your life. I adjudicate you guilty. I sentence you to life in prison."
Yes. Amen. That's true. I believe it too. He should have been in prison a long time ago.
I'm unsure of the philosophical implications to keeping somebody alive to think forever about what they did, or to continue to use taxpayers' money to keep them fed, rested, exercised, educated, or just get rid of them.
Right. I know there are a lot of swayed opinions on that, on both sides. The state attorney, Susan Lopez, stated in response to Matthew escaping the death penalty, quote, "We thank the jury for their service. We respect their decision and ask that the community do the same. The question of whether the defendant should receive the death penalty should be left to a jury's recommendation. I will not take that decision away from a jury. I follow the law. This case was never about the defendant. It was about honoring Kay Baker and her loving family. Kay's family and friends have shown amazing grace and courage. Today is the conclusion of this case, but we must always remember the wonderful Kay Baker, the life she changed, and her legacy of service and kindness," end quote. And that is the outcome of this case. But it's not the end of Kay Baker's legacy. There are valuable lessons to be learned following this story. And as we know, headlines are filled daily with tragic stories of obsession and jealousy, which can turn into a deadly rage. In the context of intimate partner violence cases, they can quickly escalate due to a combination of psychological, emotional, and behavioral factors. While jealousy is a normal human emotion, and it can become toxic and destructive when it takes control of an individual's thoughts and actions within a relationship. It's my goal to impart wisdom to you in these videos, and it's important for me to give you some key factors that can contribute to this dangerous transformation from jealousy into a deadly rage, and to look for them. And you can also look in the description box for resources available to you if you are in trouble. But I do want to go over those factors, and you can help me because these are important for them to know about. They're basically red flags. They're signs, if you are in a relationship right now, that can show you clues, because we said from the beginning, maybe they're signs, clues that you should probably look for and take note of.
Okay, so the first one would be the insecurity, but not necessarily insecurity, but the control. The jealousy often stems from deep-seated feelings, and the insecurity over one's partner, an aggressor, may harbor an irrational fear of losing their partner, leading to intense possessiveness and attempts to monitor and manipulate their every move. See, that's where that comes into play, because you could be jealous of something. In fact, it's kind of cute to be like, "Oh man, I want you to spend more time with me." But when you're trying to control and manipulate and affect the environment around that person, that is dangerous.
It's coercive control, which is like a big thing in domestic interactions like this, like toxic ones. And you mentioned self-esteem or like how someone's self-confidence can be affected. And that is the second one. It's the low self-esteem, because these aggressors, they struggle with low self-esteem, which can be, again, like you said, normal, but their feelings of inadequacy are perceived differently because they're triggered. Anytime they see, you talking to somebody else, they think it has a direct correlation between them being lesser than. And this jealousy can fuel a need for power and for dominance, which can escalate into violence or other deadly acts.
And then you have entitlement or ownership. In toxic relationships, the aggressive partner often believes that they have a sense of entitlement and ownership over their partner.
Her queen
in his kingdom.
His queen in his kingdom.
Right. They may view their partner as an object or possession, leading to a distorted sense of control. When jealousy arises, it further reinforces their belief that they have the right to dictate and control their partner's actions, often leading to violent outbursts.
And that's also a form of manipulation, which is the fourth factor, because this toxic partnership, it's when a person will use these emotional manipulative tactics. They'll use jealousy as a tool to isolate their partner. And this just makes the aggressor feel triggered, like I said again. So all of these things are triggers for them internally, and they use their feelings to control their partner. Like, oh, you're making me feel so sad, or you're making me feel this. And like I said, oh, I'm doing this because I love you.
Like gaslighting.
Yeah, it is.
And this is the last factor, escalating patterns.
And one of the most important ones to look for, by the way,
is jealousy-induced violence often follows a pattern of escalating behaviors. What starts as possessiveness and controlling behaviors can progressively escalate to verbal arguments, physical violence, and ultimately a deadly rage. Each episode of jealousy and subsequent violence reinforces that cycle, making it increasingly difficult to break free from the dangerous relationship.
It's crucial to be able to recognize these dangerous patterns of behavior, especially in intimate partner violence cases, and to raise awareness about the resources that are available to support victims. If you or someone you know is experiencing intimate partner violence, it is crucial to seek help and to take proactive steps towards safety. There are resources available to you in navigating this difficult situation and creating a safe plan to escape. You can reach the national hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE or 7233, or you can visit their website, which is thehotline.org, for confidential support, guidance, and access to local resources. And it's such a great site. I have been there, and there is a pop-up right when you get there. It's very clever that it's just called the hotline, so it doesn't say anything from first glance that you're going to this URL for trying to save yourself. But there is a warning that pops up, and it says, security alert, internet usage can be monitored and is impossible to erase completely. If you're concerned that your internet usage might be monitored, you can call them. And that's the number I gave you. And what they're basically saying is that you should be careful because this can be on your browser history. And if you are in this intimate violence relationship, they could be monitoring where you're going and see this. So they give you this option to click off that doesn't show in your history. You can leave now and it overrides it or something, which is so clever. So remember, you're not alone and there are people ready to support you. It's essential to prioritize safety and well-being. If possible, develop a safe exit plan with the help of professionals that are trained to handle these domestic situations, because your life matters. And by reaching out for help, you can take the first steps towards reclaiming your freedom and building a life free from danger. So that's all that we have for you today. And we thank you so much for being here for our very first episode.
Yeah, it was fun.
And we're excited for you to give us another chance in our next episode, which will be coming next week. Don't forget to subscribe, click the notification bell so you don't miss out. And thank you for being here. This is my first time filming with someone else.
And I loved it because I'm always, on the couch or wherever we are, and she's writing next to me. I'm like, ooh, what's this case about? And then she tells me, and I love listening. So it's kind of fun because she's writing these cases and she invites me on here and I get to hear them for the first time, like you guys all are.
And he's reading them for the first time. So it's actually very hard to read out loud, just to let you guys know. I know you know, he does a great job, but it is a very hard thing to do. If you remember back to like elementary school, middle school, we always used to like follow along when the other person was reading really quick to like get our spot so that when it's our turn, we're like, and Sally went, and you're so scared.
Oh, my ADHD.
I know. I mean, it is very hard. So I congratulate you
Thank
for
you.
being here today on my podcast. And we're excited. And we will see you very soon. If you,
We're definitely putting the AC on the next episode.
It is so hot in here.
I've progressively got more wet as we've been sitting
Ew.
here.
And moist. Okay.
And bye.
Goodbye. And good riddance, John. You won't be coming back for the next episode.
I'm going to turn into a puddle by the time this is over.
Thank you guys so very much for watching. This is really our sign off now. We'll see you in the next video. Bye.
Bye.